Dark clouds were building up without rest in the cloudy sky. A drop of acid rain eventually fell from above. It got blown about by the strong winds and finally landed in front of Ren'Zai-Asu. Ren'Zai-Asu was lying on the ground in the wilderness. He frowned and felt that he was a little unlucky today as the acid rain arrived before his prey appeared. Ren'Zai-Asu still did not make a move. If he couldn't catch some game today, he and Yan Liaoyuan would starve to death before they could die from the disease caused by the acid rain. Ren'Zai-Asu's eyes popped when he heard a bird's wings flapping. However, the rhythm of his breathing did not change. Ren'Zai-Asu had used a tree branch to prop up a black cauldron and scattered some black breadcrumbs underneath it a short distance ahead of himself. That large bird landed beside the cauldron and looked around sharply with an alert gaze. The bird finally seemed to let its guard down as it started sneaking towards the cauldron as a thief would. However, when it entered into the boundary under the cauldron and was about to lower its head to peck on the breadcrumbs, Ren'Zai-Asu pulled hard on the rope in his hand. Right after, the young man jumped up and rushed towards the cauldron like an unbridled wild donkey. Before the large bird could flip the cauldron over, he mustered all of his strength and used his body to pin down the cauldron. He took the sparrow out from under the cauldron and tucked it in his arm. With a strong twist of his hand, the sparrow's neck broke and it went limp. At this moment, Ren'Zai-Asu felt a pinch in his heart because the large sparrow's claws had punched several holes into his jacket. Suddenly, his mind went blank and Ren'Zai-Asu fell to his knees. It was as if a massive copper bell had been struck inside his head. Then he descended into a chaotic darkness. Oh no, in the past, this sickness only occurred at midnight, but now it came earlier. This was not the first time his sickness had acted up. Almost all the people in town knew there was something wrong with his head, and his pain would flare up at random times. Only Ren'Zai-Asu knew that it was not pain but a state of confusion that he was experiencing. Wait a minute. This time, it was different from the past. The black mist in his mind had dispersed and revealed a palace beyond it. Ren'Zai-Asu's eyes flew open, and he stood up. He looked at himself in disbelief. I came to this quickly. He originally had a chance to get a closer look at the palace's appearance, but he knew better. There was no difference between remaining unconscious and dying out here in the wilderness. Right now, he had to rush back to the town that was situated outside of Stronghold 113 before the heavens opened up with the acid rain. Ren'Zai-Asu tied the sparrow's legs together and slung it over his shoulder. Before he could run far, however, the silhouette of a person holding a bone knife stood in his way. Give your catch to me. But before the person could finish his sentence, he saw a big cauldron swinging in closer and closer until it smacked into his face. Damn, the robber fell backwards. He had not expected Ren'Zai-Asu's attack to be that swift. And it was so forceful too. Something was not right. He could hear that young man's footsteps approaching again. The robber hurriedly sat up and turned around to look. He discovered that the young man was coming back to him. Ren'Zai-Asu had not planned to return, but he distinctly heard a voice reverberate from the palace in his mind. Quest, gift your catch to someone else. Who said that? Ren'Zai-Asu turned around and walked back to the robber with some uncertainty. The robber said in panic, let's talk this over. You want this sparrow? Ren'Zai-Asu asked. The robber's eyes lit up. I do. Here, take it. Ren'Zai-Asu stuffed the sparrow into the man's arms without explaining himself. That unfamiliar yet neutral voice intoned again. Quest complete. Awarded, basic skill duplication scroll. You may use it to learn another person's skills. Ren'Zai-Asu was stunned because he could feel a leather parchment appear within his mind. A skill duplication scroll that he could use to copy another's skills, like hunting, survival, or some other skill. The robber hugged the large sparrow tightly in his arms and began to express his gratitude. You're a good person. Before he could finish speaking, he saw Ren'Zai-Asu grab the sparrow back before leaving again. The robber was confused. He stared at Ren'Zai-Asu's receding figure as he scurried away. The fuck is this guy? What is he after? Ren'Zai-Asu returned later than usual because of the robbery and his sudden loss of consciousness. Since he saw the sky darkening, he knew that it would be extremely dangerous to pass through the town with his catch at this time. During the day, people from the stronghold still came out to maintain order. But at night, those people would return back to the stronghold. They were only worried that if the town got too chaotic, it would affect the manual labor that the refugees were performing. Oh, looks like Ren'Zai-Asu got quite the harvest today. When Ren'Zai-Asu ran back into town carrying the cauldron, someone with a dirty face greeted him. It was as though he had not washed his face ever since the day he was born. Most of the people in town looked like that. On most days, they went to the nearby coal mine to work in exchange for some food. Ren'Zai-Asu did not respond to anyone who greeted him. He just wanted to get back to his shack as quickly as possible. As Ren Zaiasu took an alternate way into town, he could see the towering stronghold walls from a short distance away. The atmosphere on the street grew tense as though some kind of danger lurked within the shacks. But with Ren Zaiasu holding a bone knife in his hand, the people with threatening intentions restrained themselves. The first thing Ren Zaiasu learned while staying here was not to trust anyone other than Yan Liayuan. Whispers came from the shack next to the road. Ren Zaiasu has caught more game meat. Don't provoke him. A voice ended the whispering from inside the shack. Someone seemed to know about Ren Zaiasu's past. Ren Zaiasu lifted the curtain door to his shack. The warmth in it made him less tense. When Yan Liayuan, who was sitting in the shack and doing his homework, saw Ren Zaiasu return, he looked pleasantly surprised. You caught a sparrow. Why didn't you light the kerosene lamp? Ren Zaiasu asked while frowning. Yan Liayuan was usually a wayward child, but in front of Ren Zaiasu, who was like his elder brother, he became surprisingly docile. I wanted to save some fuel for us. What if you become nearsighted? Ren Zaiasu put the sparrow down. Yan Liayuan's eyes lit up. When can I go hunting with you? Yan Liayuan continued to ask. You're only 14. Why would you want to go hunting? If you do well in school, you won't have to go hunting. Ren Zaiasu said, isn't it much better to learn accounting, physics, or chemistry rather than hunting? In this era, even savages recognize the importance of knowledge. Did you get injured? Yan Liayuan frowned when he saw the wound on Ren Zaiasu's hand. It had been pecked by the sparrow, and the wound was still bleeding. The big cauldron was hung on a rod, and the flicking fire in the shack's fire pit illuminated Ren Zaiasu's face every now and again. It's just a scratch. It fell silent in the shack. After a while, Ren Zaiasu ladled out the cooked organs of the sparrow from the pot and handed them to Yan Liayuan. Eat up. Yan Liayuan's eyes suddenly reddened. I don't want it. You should have it instead since you need to heal your wound. I'll just have some soup. Ren Zaiasu said, I still have some black bread that I can eat. I'm not eating. Your wound isn't a scratch at all. I saw someone in town die as a result of an infection a few days ago because we don't have access to any medicine for treating cuts and scrapes, Yan Liayuan stubbornly said as tears nearly rolled down his face. Look at what kind of people are around us. What will happen to me if you don't eat well and someone rushes in and stabs me to death at night? I send you to school because I hope you won't become someone like me, who only knows how to hunt. You have a unique skill. As long as you study hard, you will not need to work all day in the wilderness like me to earn a living. The reason I send you to school is because I don't want you to become savages like them. Ren Zaiasu had already fallen asleep. After waiting out in the wilderness for such a long time, all he managed to catch was one sparrow. Although he spent a majority of the time lying on the ground and keeping still, anyone with experience would know that staying alert in such a position was actually very tiring. As it was almost fall, it felt a little cold. At this moment, the rain stopped. Footsteps came from outside the shack's curtain door. The shoes that were stepping on the muddy road after the rain made a unique slippery sound. Someone lifted a corner of the curtain door. However, before the visitor could lift the curtain door aside, Yan Liayuan's bone knife was pressed against the person's neck. It was a pretty face. A beautiful woman stood outside. Yan Liayuan frowned when he saw the woman. It was not a stranger. She lived nearby. The woman smiled. Liayuan, you're still awake. Where is Zaiasu? I heard that he got back. He's already asleep. Big sister Zaiaoyu. Yan Liayuan smiled. If you have anything to say, just tell me. Zaiaoyu's face looked a little unnatural. Did he get hurt when he went out this time? His hand was nipped by a sparrow. But big sister Zaiaoyu, you don't have to be so concerned about my brother, do you? After all, you're 8 years older than him. After Ren Zaiasu had fallen asleep, Yan Liayuan adopted a maturity beyond his years when dealing with outsiders. You cheeky imp, I consider you two my little brothers. For some reason, Zaiaoyu felt that Yan Liayuan did not like her very much. Then I'll head back first, Zaiaoyu said. When your brother wakes up, tell him that I came over. Okay, Yan Liayuan smiled. I'll pass the message along. After Zaiaoyu left, Ren Zaiasu suddenly spoke from behind Yan Liayuan. Don't bully big sister Zaiaoyu in the future. It's not easy for her either. Bro, she's not decent, Yan Liayuan said. Besides, she's only sticking close to you because she knows you always succeed when hunting. Who's decent around here? Ren Zaiasu said calmly. No decent person can survive in this world. Everyone's hand is forced by their living conditions. We can only distance ourselves from her. Don't make fun of her. A chaste woman who was too decent would not be able to survive in this town. Ren Zaiasu thought for a while and said, she didn't even mention that she likes me. Besides, are you sure that she's only getting close to me because I'm successful at hunting, and not because I'm handsome? Bro, everyone has not washed their faces for months. Everyone here looks basically the same. Yan Liayuan was speechless as he looked at Ren Zaiasu. Bro, didn't you fall asleep? Why are you still awake? I was just thinking, Ren Zaiasu said as a brief explanation. Ren Zaiasu was not asleep because he had been exploring the secrets of the palace in his mind. In the circular palace, the walls were lined with old wooden cabinets, making it look like a huge showroom of sorts. However, he could not see what was on the display cabinets in the showroom as they were covered in black mist. In the middle of the room, there was only one table with a brass typewriter on top of it. It was an obsolete typewriter that would make loud clacking sounds when typed on and hadn't existed for a very long time since the cataclysm. There were only 24 brass keys on this typewriter. Each of them was engraved with a character: fair, positive, honest, real, friendly, kind, rich, strong, etc. It was full of positive energy in a manner of speaking. But it seemed that the typewriter was supplied with an unlimited amount of leather parchment, and would move by itself without anyone typing on the brass keys. Currently on it were 2 small lines of words that had appeared during the afternoon. Quest, gift your catch to someone else. Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. You may use it to learn another person's skills. He could not tell if he was imagining this or if there was some other explanation for it. According to legend, some people could create a memory palace and build a fantasy world based on the level of their spiritual will. But Ren Zaiasu felt that his palace looked a little different from the description of a memory palace. Why would it get him to gift his catch to someone else? Did this typewriter want him to be a good person? To be a good person in a world where ethics came at a premium? No way in hell. I might possess some kind of skill too, Ren Zaiasu said. Sitting at the entrance of the shack, Yan Liayuan was stunned as he lifted the curtain door to gaze at the starry sky after the rain. You mean? I'm still not sure. I have to try it out and see. Ren Zaiasu sat down beside Yan Liayuan. According to the legends in town, someone could pull a train out of thin air. I didn't believe it in the past, but after I met you, I thought that it might be a possibility. Now that I might also have a strange skill, this feels very weird to me. Yan Liayuan's skill was luck. It was a very baffling skill to comprehend. When Yan Liayuan made a wish for Ren Zaiasu to return from a successful hunt, a sparrow would mysteriously drop at his feet even though he did not do anything while walking out in the wilderness. However, this skill had a side effect. Yan Liayuan would usually get a fever that would not subside or suffer some other minor illnesses or mishaps after he made a wish. Suddenly, a shooting star flashed across the sky. Yan Liayuan subconsciously put his hands together to make a wish. However, he was stopped by Ren Zaiasu. Don't you go making any wishes. Something is going to happen to you if you do. Nowadays, Ren Zaiasu rarely depended on Yan Liayuan's luck as he was capable of hunting with great success. He did not need Yan Liayuan to cast his skill anymore, and Yan Liayuan wouldn't go against his wishes either. The skinny Yan Liayuan watched the shooting star vanished, lost in thought. Why do shooting stars come and go so quickly? What if people can't make a wish in time? Ren Zaiasu thought for a while and answered, they probably move so quickly because they don't actually want to listen to anyone's wishes. Ren Zaiasu walked into a shop with a grocery store sign above the entrance. All sorts of items, such as cigarettes, matchsticks, metalware, food, and clothing, were sold in here. But the prices were very expensive. The old man in the shop was over the moon when he saw Ren Zaiasu. That looks like a rather large sparrow. Ren Zaiasu threw the sparrow onto the glass counter. How much can I get for this? Oh my, don't be so rough. That's an expensive piece of glass you're throwing it onto, Old Wang said, pained. He picked up the limp sparrow and put it onto the metallic scale beside him. 1.74 kilograms. Not bad, Zaiasu. At this moment, the claw-like fingers of Old Wang's wrinkled hands instinctively started making some calculations on an abacus. The abacus beads were pushed around, ticking and tacking. The market rate today is 200 yuan 1 per 500 grams, so I'll pay you 700 for this catch. Make it 900. Ren Zaiasu said firmly, it's almost winter, and there are fewer sparrows out there these days, so 900 yuan is the lowest I will sell it for. Old Wang was unhappy as he pushed his abacus in front of Ren Zaiasu and said, I'll be sending this sparrow into the stronghold for the aristocracy to eat. Although there's a lack of meat in the stronghold, there's still a fixed price for everything. We have to do it by the book. Right as Old Wang finished speaking, he saw Ren Zaiasu take the sparrow back and get ready to leave the shop. He quickly yanked the sleeve of Ren Zaiasu's ragged jacket. Where are you going? I'm going to check the price at Old Lie's grocery store, Ren Zaiasu said. Old Wang's grasp tightened even further. Someone from the stronghold's management had specifically given notice that they would be coming out to collect exotic animals today. This news wasn't promulgated to him alone. Old Wang smiled, his wrinkles appearing. How much do you want to sell it for? Ren Zaiasu still wanted to leave. We'll talk again after I ask around. Old Wang smiled amiably. Then won't Liao be late for school? Alright, 900 yuan it is. What did you just say? Ren Zaiasu asked calmly. Then wouldn't Liao be late? The sentence before that. How much do you want to sell it for? 12. Old Wang was confused. A moment later, Old Wang was feeling the pinch as he counted the money. He wet his fingers with his saliva and counted the cash over and over again, afraid that he would get the amount wrong. The final transaction price was 1198 yuan. Ren Zaiasu had also given some concessions of his own. A sparrow fetching 1198 yuan was not the result of the inflated prices, nor was it because of the large size of the sparrow. More importantly, it was because the people in Stronghold 113 did not normally get the chance to eat such exotic animals. Things were precious because they were scarce. Old Wang would never make a bad business deal. When he resold this sparrow to a powerful customer, he would still be able to earn a small profit from it and even gain their favor. He looked around the grocery store and asked, "How much are you selling the cotton padded jacket for?" The jackets are new arrivals, and they cost 500 yuan apiece. You should know that I bought them for 490 yuan each. I'm not looking to profit from selling these cotton padded jackets at all. Old Wang said, one less death is one life saved, after all. How kind of you, praised Ren Zaiasu nonchalantly. I'll buy one. Check and see what size Liao should wear. His gaze arresting at the counter behind Old Wang. How much are you selling the antibiotics and anti-inflammatory drugs for? You want to buy medicine? Only then did Old Wang notice the blood-stained bandage wrapped around Ren Zaiasu's hand. You're injured. You really must buy some medicine then. If not, you could get an infection and die. I'm asking you how much it is. Ren Zaiasu said impatiently. 210 yuan each. Old Wang said, antibiotics must be taken for 3 days straight. I'll sell you 3 pills for 620 yuan and give you an application of iodopavidone 1 for free. I only have 10 pills left in stock here. Ren Zaiasu thought for a while before saying, how about rounding it down? If by rounding down, you mean removing the zero, shut it, Old Wang snapped. Ren Zaiasu smacked his lips and reluctantly looked away. Forget it, I'm not buying them. Inflammation is uncommon during winter. He turned around and led Yan Liao into school. The school was the cleanest and tidiest place in the entire town. It was also the only residence that had its own individual yard. Walking in from the outside, properly spaced crops grown in the yard could be seen. Scallions, garlic sprouts, potatoes, cabbages, and many others. Ren Zaiasu squatted on top of the wall and listened to what was being taught inside the classroom. As he could not afford to pay the tuition, he had to eavesdrop like this. The teacher would sometimes tell the students stories about how glorious human civilization was in the past. Frankly, however, the teacher had not witnessed such a time either. Whatever he was telling them now were details passed on by word of mouth, so the truth had probably been distorted already. Although it was not very reliable, Ren Zaiasu was still fascinated by it. At times, Ren Zaiasu would ask Yan Liao questions about information he didn't understand or hear. This greatly troubled Yan Liao because if he could not answer him, it would show that he did not pay attention during the lessons. Hence, whenever Ren Zaiasu was present to attend the lessons, Yan Liao would be exceptionally attentive during class. There was only one teacher who gave classes at the school. His name was Zhang Jinglan. Most people felt that the teacher was wise and thought that he knew everything. However, Ren Zaiasu always had doubts since people specialized in different professions, which meant people were usually only good at certain things. So how could it be possible for Mr. Zhang to be omniscient? Ren Zaiasu had always been different from most other people as he liked to ponder questions that he came across. Later on, he found out from listening to Mr. Zhang's lessons that this was known as dialectical logic. Yan Liao was sometimes bewildered because Ren Zaiasu would often oppose Mr. Zhang Jinglan's views, yet he still kept coming back to attend classes whenever he had free time. Zhang Jinglan used to like to keep the windows shut during class as he was afraid that any outside commotion would affect the students and distract them. But after he realized that Ren Zaiasu was eavesdropping from outside the class, he left a window open for him. And now, he might as well just let Ren Zaiasu into the yard. Living in this chaotic world, many of the students' parents sent their children to school not because they wanted them to gain knowledge, but so that they could easily get married in the future. This was especially true for the girls who attended school, as they would often marry into good families. In this generation, it was impressive to be literate and to handle 3-digit calculations. Everyone was busy trying to survive, so who would care if you were cultured or not when food was short? Yan Liayuan saw Ren Zai Asu go into the grocery store to buy a filtered cigarette. Old Wang even proudly mentioned that his cigarettes did not have any additional substances and were very safe to smoke. A cigarette costs 20 yuan per stick, extremely expensive. Yan Liayuan asked with suspicion, "Bro, why are you buying a cigarette?" "Your teacher allowed me to listen to his lessons from the yard. Even if I don't have to pay tuition, I should still show my gratitude." Ren Zai Asu smiled and said, "I know that Mr. Zhang likes to smoke." Whenever someone treated Ren Zai Asu kindly, he would return the gesture. While everyone was out in the school's backyard eating lunch, the two of them took the opportunity to approach Zhang Jinglin. He was eating some stir-fried cabbage when Ren Zai Asu handed the cigarette to him with a grin. Zhang Jinglin did not reject it. However, he made Yan Liayuan stand a distance away from him. "It's not good for you to inhale cigarette smoke while you're still growing." Ren Zai Asu thanked him. "Thank you for letting me into the yard to attend your lessons, sir." Phew. Zhang Jinglin lit the cigarette with a match he used for preparing meals at home. Then he blew out a breathful of smoke, looking pleased. "Students who enjoy attending lessons like you are rare. You can attend the lessons if you like. In the future, you can stand at the door, but you're not allowed to enter the classroom." "That's great," Ren Zai Asu said. "Teacher, I have a question." "Speak." Perhaps due to the fact that Zhang Jinglin rarely had the chance to have a smoke, he didn't mind any questions that Ren Zai Asu had for him. "Teacher, you said before that humans had a lot of technology before the cataclysm happened. Since we humans were not wiped out, why didn't those technologies reappear?" Zhang Jinglin glanced at Ren Zai Asu. For a period of time after the cataclysm, humans did not keep track of how long they had been drifting along in anarchy. It was good enough to survive each day, so nobody bothered with gaining knowledge and becoming a learned person. But we should still have some information left, right? If we learn them, couldn't we return to civilization quicker? Ren Zai Asu wondered. "It's become lost through the generations," Zhang Jinglin said in regret. "Let me ask you, if I gave you a set of instructions to construct an airplane, would you be able to make one? It's not like I've learned how to do it before. Although having the instructions can save a lot of time, I'll still have to start from scratch," Ren Zai Asu said. "That's right. Everyone is starting from scratch. How could no one have overcome the hardships and gotten into research and building up knowledge again in all those years? Those who attempted all died from starvation," Zhang Jinglin said. "Could all of that knowledge really have become lost through the generations?" Ren Zai Asu could not accept it. Zhang Jinglin looked at Ren Zai Asu seriously this time and said pointedly, "They are in the possession of a small number of people." "That's enough." Zhang Jinglin stood up and said, "Don't pursue this matter any further. It's time for class." Ren Zai Asu pestered Zhang Jinglin with a final question. "Teacher, when were the walls of the stronghold built? And why did they build them?" After the cataclysm, wild animals ran rampant. A very long time ago, there was even a bug infestation. As such, humans were forced to build tall walls to ward off the danger, Zhang Jinglin explained. But even though animals have evolved, they don't actually initiate attacks on humans. Ren Zai Asu was curious about this. Monkeys still remained omnivores, and sparrows still loved eating grains, so it was not like they would actively try to make a meal out of humans. In the ring where humanity was living in its stronghold 113, the majority of the more ferocious animals had actually been isolated outside of it. The higher the number of a stronghold, the more dangerous a place it was. For example, the legendary stronghold 178 would often see many casualties each year as they tried to expel beasts from around their area. Meanwhile, stronghold 113 was considered to be an inland area. Zhang Jinglin then went to get a change of clothes. Ren Zai Asu asked, "Teacher, why did you change your clothes? Your previous set of clothes were not dirty at all." Zhang Jinglin adjusted his collar and replied, "The set I was wearing earlier reeks of cigarette smoke. It is not good for the students if they smell it." Yan Liayuan's respect for him deepened, but Ren Zai Asu suddenly felt a little unhappy. "So it's alright for me to smell it then? It wasn't like you asked me to stand further away from you just now, right?" Zhang Jinglin thought for a long while. "Get lost." All of a sudden, Ren Zai Asu heard a voice speak again from the palace in his mind. Thirst for knowledge is never a bad thing. But you have to teach other people whatever you've learned." Ren Zai Asu was stunned. During the afternoon class, the students found it very refreshing when they saw Ren Zai Asu. who was a few years older than them, standing outside the door. It made many of the students turn their heads to look at him. Zhang Jinglin had to knock on the blackboard several times before he could get the students' attention. He said, "I'll be teaching about survival for the afternoon class." This was the current era, and the distinctiveness of school came from not only teaching the arts and sciences, but also teaching survival. However, Zhang Jinglin had always felt exasperated when teaching this lesson, because he wasn't experienced with surviving in the wild. Therefore, for most of this lesson, he could only teach it according to what was written in the books that were preserved from the past. Zhang Jinglin looked at the students in the classroom. "Pay attention and listen in class. Don't think that danger is very far from you. For now, your parents are still protecting you. But when you grow up, you have to learn how to protect yourselves. For today's lesson, we'll be discussing what you should do if you encounter a pack of wolves." The students in class actually liked listening to the survival lessons the most. The other subjects were still a little boring for their current age group, whereas they found the survival lessons to be the most interesting. The classroom quieted down. Zhang Jinglin looked at Ren Zaiasu, who was standing at the door and listening in on the lesson. "You there, tell us what you do when you encounter a pack of wolves in the wild." Ren Zaiasu gave it some thought before replying, "I'd try my best to find a slope surrounded by greenery, because that will be the most suitable place for an auspicious burial ground." Zhang Jinglin was surprised. Zhang Jinglin was left speechless by Ren Zaiasu's answer. However, he wasn't aware that Ren Zaiasu was also wondering about this right now. Didn't he teach everyone what he knew? Why was the quest still not complete? Could there be something wrong with the knowledge that he imparted? "Teacher," Ren Zaiasu said in a serious tone, "you probably haven't seen how huge the wolves in the wild are. Most of the people in town haven't even seen or dealt with them before, but I did. Don't mention a pack of wolves. Even if I were just encountering a lone wolf, the outcome would still be the same. Choose wherever you want to be buried." Initially, Ren Zaiasu thought that Zhang Jinglin would refute him. After all, the way he answered the question would affect the teacher's authority and dignity. However, Zhang Jinglin thought for a long time before saying, "You can sit in the classroom for future lessons. You will also be teaching the survival lessons from now on." Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. He could feel his muscles bulking up slightly underneath his clothes. This was a real supernatural phenomenon, as no one could suddenly gain additional muscle strength in a mere tenth of a second. With this, Ren Zaiasu was quite sure that his mind palace was indeed a unique type of skill. This made Ren Zaiasu ecstatic. In fact, he should have been overjoyed about it long ago, but he was afraid that none of it would turn out to be real. A frequent hunter must be highly familiar with their body. They had to know how much they could lift and how fast and hard they could punch or stab with a knife. So Ren Zaiasu immediately evaluated his newfound strength. If the average male adult had a strength rating of 3.0, then Ren Zaiasu used to have a strength rating of 2.5. As he was only 17 years old, it was quite normal for him to be weaker than an adult. He could survive in this town all these years not because of his strength, but because he was ruthless, alert, and calm enough. As his strength surpassed that of the average male adults, this meant that his chance of survival in this wasteland increased by a large amount. After school, Yan Liayuan excitedly said, "Bro, now that you've become the substitute teacher, maybe you'll replace Mr. Zhang as our town's teacher in the future." Ren Zaiasu paused. Indeed, that seems likely. Mr. Zhang also started off as a substitute teacher. It was only after the old teacher passed away that he took over teaching at school. Yeah, everyone in town knows that whoever becomes the substitute teacher will likely take over at the school someday. Think about it. Mr. Zhang allowed you into the classroom to attend the lessons and even made you the substitute teacher. He's definitely thinking of letting you replace him in the future. Actually, it's not a bad idea if I really do become the school teacher. Ren Zaiasu said, "When I get the position, I'll give it up to you. In that way, you'll end up becoming the school teacher instead, right?" Ren Zaiasu had really never thought about becoming a school teacher, but it was not because he despised the profession. If he had despised it, he wouldn't think of handing the position to Yan Liayuan. Instead, he felt that he was not suitable for this profession at all. If he really had no chance to enter the stronghold at some point in the future, then the wilderness would be the only place left where he could truly belong. Ren Zaiasu was imagining a future where he handed the school teacher position to Yan Liayuan as they walked. But he did not notice Yan Liayuan slowing down. Looking at Ren Zaiasu's back, Yan Liayuan experienced an indescribable feeling. This young man's hand was still wrapped in bandages, and even though he had a sharp tongue, he would always leave the best for him. When Ren Zaiasu turned around and realized that Yan Liayuan had fallen quite far behind, he barked, "What are you doing? Hurry up!" coming. On their way back home, Ren Zaiasu and Yan Liayuan suddenly saw a group of people come out of the stronghold. There were around 14 of them in the group, and half of them were wearing fanciful clothes of all colors, while the other half was made up of people who donned the combat uniform of the private army employed by the overseers of Stronghold 113. It looked like their trip would be accompanied by soldiers, so it was no wonder they dared to head out into a place like the Jing Mountains. These people actually didn't require guides with combat value. They only needed someone who knew the way. However, Ren Zaiasu did not assume the private troops were strong just because they were employed by the overseers of Stronghold 113. In fact, he rarely saw these private troops leaving the stronghold, so it could still lead to serious issues as they might not even have any actual combat experience or seen blood before. Ren Zaiasu saw some of the private troops smoking filtered cigarettes, which were rarely seen in town. A light whiff of cigarette smoke drifted over. Ren Zaiasu could distinctly smell a weird odor. He remembered old Wang mentioning that many of the cigarettes given out by the factories had addictive substances added into them to give people a high. Ren Zaiasu was puzzled why the private troops would smoke something like that when their profession required them to keep a clear mind. Another member of the private army asked, "Who is Ren Zaiasu? We don't care how skillful he is at combat as long as he knows the way." "Oh, Ren Zaiasu is well known for being the best hunter in town. He knows most of the routes, so it'll be perfectly fine if you get him to lead the way." Old Wang smiled and said, "Take my word for it, he's definitely the right choice. But there's something wrong with that kid's head." As night fell, the people in town gradually returned to their homes. Those living in houses would keep their doors shut while those living in shacks would conceal themselves behind curtain doors. When Ren Zaiasu came back in the evening, he heard that a man working at the rubber factory had been stabbed to death after returning from work. It was said that someone learned about that man's habit of saving money, so someone got evil intentions. The people in town liked living together to look out for each other. Friends, brothers, and couples stayed together and took turns to keep watch throughout the night. In a way, this gave them a better sense of security. This was also how Ren Zaiasu and Yan Liayuan teamed up together at the beginning. But some people fell victim to the people they partnered with. The assailants were often short-sighted as they did not realize that after harming their partners, no one would ever trust them again. The assailants who ended up alone this way would usually come to a bad end. "Hey, bro, there are 2 potatoes hidden under the chair. Oh, there are even 3 pills here too. Aren't these the anti-inflammatory pills that you wanted to buy today? They look just like the ones we saw at the store." Yan Liayuan was surprised. "Did you put them there?" "No." Ren Zaiasu shook his head as he looked at the 3 pills. "These sure are anti-inflammatory pills. Then Big Sister Zaiaoyu must have been the one who put them there. She was the only one I told about your injury." Yan Liayuan grinned as he handed a potato to Ren Zaiasu. "Big Sister Zaiaoyu is so good to you. Why don't you marry her?" Ren Zaiasu did a double take. "You really change your stance quickly, huh? When she gives us something to eat, you praise her. But when there's nothing, you start bad-mouthing her." Yan Liayuan chomped on the potato noisily. All of a sudden, Ren Zaiasu heard footsteps coming from outside. There were a lot of people. It was very rare for people to travel on the streets of the town at night. But Ren Zaiasu had already guessed who they were and what their motive was. The group had learned about Ren Zaiasu from old Wang's grocery store. Although they had some hesitations over his mental illness, they asked some other sources as well, and almost everyone felt that Ren Zaiasu was the best candidate to act as their guide. Some of them even wondered what was so great about this Ren Zaiasu that made him so well known in town. Suddenly, the shack's curtain door was thrown aside. Ren Zaiasu happily grasped old Wang's hands and said to him, "Congratulations. Father and child are both fine. The baby weighs 3.24 kilograms. Old Wang was confused, as were the band and the soldiers of the private army. A band member pointed at Ren Zaiasu and looked at old Wang. "How can you call this alright when he's so mentally ill? Besides, what the hell did he mean by father and child are both fine? Wasn't it supposed to be mother and child are both fine?" That band member said angrily, "Wang Fugui, do you know what the consequences of lying to us are? Is this what you call alright?" As soon as he finished speaking, the band members turned around and left. They had had some expectations for the legendary Ren Zaiasu, but in the end, they found out that he was just a lunatic. No wonder the people in town said that there was something wrong with Ren Zaiasu's head. Didn't what they say turn out to be true? Ren Zaiasu stood at the entrance of his shack as he watched the band leave. Old Wang was still at their side apologizing to them. "Although there's something wrong with Ren Zaiasu's head, this is not what it's like. Please let me explain." The band member did not bother listening to his explanation. Wang Fugui, I'm giving you 6 hours to get me a suitable candidate. Even if there's nothing wrong with this kid, we won't be using him. We'll be setting off at dawn, so don't screw up our plans. Ren Zaiasu stood happily at the shack's entrance and watched the commotion as though he had nothing to do with it. But unexpectedly, the girl wearing the cap turned around and looked at him. Ren Zaiasu suddenly had a feeling that he had been figured out. He could not even see the expression of the girl under her cap, yet he felt his heart throb for some reason. Ren Zaiasu subconsciously activated and used his skill duplication scroll. A voice intoned from the palace, one of the target's skills will be randomly copied. Randomly copied. Randomly copied target's firearms skill. Do you want to learn it? Yes. Seeing the skill duplication scroll disappear, Ren Zaiasu thought that if he did not learn it, it would have gone to waste. Learning successful. You've mastered the advanced firearms proficiency. Wait a minute, didn't I get a basic scroll? How did I master advanced firearms proficiency? Shouldn't I learn a skill at the basic level at most? Ren Zaiasu wondered in his mind. There are only 2 types of skill duplication scrolls. The first type is the basic skill duplication scroll, which you can use to learn any skill advanced and lower. The second type of scroll is the master skill duplication scroll, which you can use to learn a master level skill, provided you've also attained the advanced level of the skill. There is also the chance of copying a target's superpowers, answered the voice from the palace. Ren Zaiasu was stunned to learn that he could also duplicate another's superpowers. He then remembered the girl and asked, can you tell me the level of that girl's firearms skill? Yes, this information can be revealed if it's a target you've learned from. What is the level of her firearms skill proficiency? Master. Perfect. Bro, why do you keep staring at her back? Yan Liayuan asked as he stuck his head out of the shack. Ren Zaiasu grinned from ear to ear. He turned around and looked at Yan Liayuan. Just when he was about to behave like an elder brother with authority, the curtain door from next door was lifted. A woman asked, who's back? Where? Yan Liayuan and Ren Zaiasu were stunned. The person who came out from the shack next door turned out to be Zaiaoyu. Yan Liayuan wondered, big sister Zaiaoyu, why are you in the shack next door? Zaiaoyu combed her hair and said with a smile, I moved here and will be your neighbor from now on. Was the family of 3 who were living here? Yan Liayuan asked, where have they gone? I switched houses with them, Zaiaoyu explained. Yan Liayuan pulled Ren Zaiasu aside and whispered, bro, big sister Zaiaoyu has made a big investment this time. She used to live in a brick house. Ren Zaiasu did not say anything as he lowered his head and went straight back into the shack. Yan Liayuan smiled at Zaiaoyu before withdrawing his head back into the shack as well. Bro, you're still a virgin, right? Yan Liayuan asked. Ren Zaiasu stared at Yan Liayuan and said, Liayuan, since you're not young anymore, I wish to educate you about this. Yan Liayuan sat bolt upright and turned serious. Alright, bro, ask me if there's anything you don't understand. Before Yan Liayuan could finish, he was kicked to the ground by Ren Zaiasu. But Yan Liayuan did not get angry. He just kept laughing. You've really grown bolder, huh? Ren Zaiasu laid the bed and said, do your best to not provoke big sister Zaiaoyu. And don't try to matchmake us. We can't even handle ourselves, so where will we get the time to worry about others? Okay, Yan Liayuan replied obediently. But she gave us some potatoes and medicine, and she's also very concerned about you. Are you really going to ignore her? At this moment, a rough voice came from outside the shack. It was directed to their new neighbor, Zaiaoyu. Zaiaoyu, I only found out you moved here when I went over to visit you just now. I brought you cigarettes. Ren Zaiasu and Yan Liayuan looked at each other and frowned. They heard Zaiaoyu say, I don't provide that kind of service anymore. Haha. It was as though that person with a rough voice had heard something funny. If you don't do that kind of thing anymore, how are you going to survive? Who will supply you with cigarettes in the future? Let go of me. Zaiaoyu sounded angry. The 2 of them had apparently come to blows. Something ripped. It sounded like someone's clothes had been torn. When Yan Liayuan turned to look at Ren Zaiasu, he saw that Ren Zaiasu was still frowning. Then he said in a whisper, bro, go and help her. Ren Zaiasu stood up and untied the bone knife from his calf. Raising it aloft, he walked out of the shack. Right at this moment, the keys of the brass typewriter within Ren Zaiasu's mind palace started typing words onto the leather parchment. The voice from the magnificent palace intoned at the same time, quest, help. He sneered in his mind and interrupted the voice from the palace. Even without this quest, I'll still help her. From the time that Ren Zaiasu came out of his shack holding the knife, it took just 2 seconds for him to rush up to that man. Ren Zaiasu did not say any threatening words like let her go or touch her again if you dare, because he knew that any unnecessary actions could lead to failure. All he needed to do was to use the simplest solution to solve the simplest problem. When Ren Zaiasu's slim but strong figure came sprinting over like a cheetah, the man promptly drew a knife from his waist and slashed at Ren Zaiasu. Everyone in town would carry a self-defense weapon on their person. It was common knowledge that a metal weapon would reign over a bone knife, even though the wild beasts had gained a skeletal structure as strong as steel. But being as strong as steel did not mean that it was steel. Melee weapons were not banned in town, but it was almost impossible to obtain a good metal weapon. Ren Zaiasu swung his knife diagonally upwards so hard that he almost slashed a crack right into the darkness of the night, cutting a gully across the land. Clang! The bone knife and the metal weapon collided with each other. The onlookers who were secretly watching were astonished when they saw the two knives break in half at the same time. They had only expected the bone knife to break. In that instant, Ren Zaiasu threw the bone knife aside without hesitation as the man was caught by surprise. This action of throwing the knife away was done in a swift motion after the swing. He grabbed the man's wrist and punched him hard with his other hand right in his axillary nerve 1. The axillary nerve ran about 3 centimeters around the upper arm and the armpit, but the punch did not need to land precisely because the size of the fist was enough to cover any deviation. This area is one of the human body's weaknesses. The man let out a scream as he fell to the ground, his limbs twitching uncontrollably. When he finally realized what was going on, he did not have any strength left to take on Ren Zaiasu. Ren Zaiasu stood silently beside him and looked like he was thinking about something. The man panted for a while before begging for mercy. Who is he? He's a foreman of the coal mine. He was also the one who led the group that stabbed a person to death in town last night. Since he heard that man had a habit of saving money, he started getting ideas since he had gambling debts. Zaiaoyu revealed what the man had told her last night when he boasted about the incident to her. Ren Zaiasu walked over to the road and picked up the man's metal weapon. Then he walked back next to the man. As he stared down at him in contempt, he estimated there to be at most 4 to 5 seconds before the man would regain his mobility. Suddenly, the voice from the palace that had been silent for a while intoned again. Quest, set your foe free. But just as the voice from the palace started trailing off, Ren Zaiasu crouched down and jabbed the metal weapon into the man's stomach. The sharp sound of the metal weapon tearing through leather and skin left every onlooker or anyone eavesdropping with a tingling sensation on their scalps. Then the man started bleeding profusely. You have around 3 minutes. If you can reach the town's clinic in time and get it stitched up, there might still be a chance for you to survive, Ren Zaiasu said calmly. When the man heard that, he stopped caring about the pain. He immediately got up and ran towards the clinic without another word. Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. Due to the loss of your weapon, a special side quest has been activated. Ren Zaiasu was stunned even before he finished listening. The first quest should be related to him saving Zaiaoyu, so he could understand why it was successfully completed. He did not expect for the second quest to also be considered complete. How the hell does this palace make judgments? Yan Liaoyuan asked from beside him. Bro, you're letting him go just like that. What if he recovers after getting stitched up at the clinic and comes back to take revenge on you? He's not a good person at all. Ren Zaiasu stared into the night, as if that shitty clinic in town knows how to stitch someone up. Bro, seeing how you're still so ruthless, I can rest easy. Because of this, Ren Zaiasu was relieved that the quest was considered complete even though that man was definitely going to die. Moreover, even if he did not die, that rusty metal knife was still a potent weapon for causing tetanus. Even if he could survive the injury, he might as well be dead. Although that man had a metal weapon, he could only afford to get the cheapest type. Ren Zaiasu would probably not have broken the knife otherwise. He turned around and looked at Zaiaoyu. In the night, Zaiaoyu looked a little delicate. Zaiaoyu was, in fact, 8 years older than Ren Zaiasu, but right now, it looked more like she was younger than Ren Zaiasu by 8 years. Ren Zaiasu bluntly asked, "Can you quit smoking?" Zaiaoyu nodded vigorously. Those things aren't that addictive since they've only added a tiny amount of poppy pods to it. Old Wang mentioned that the proportion of added substance is very low, so it's still possible to quit if you really want to. Ren Zaiasu said as he walked to the door of Zaiaoyu's shack and crouched down. He thrust half of his white bone knife ruthlessly into the mud, leaving only a small portion of it above ground. The onlookers who had some unscrupulous thoughts for Zaiaoyu immediately dropped the idea. In the town, this half of the bone knife now symbolized a certain someone's will. No one was willing to make any rash decisions and end up offending the ruthless Ren Zaiasu. Ren Zaiasu turned around and said to Zioyu, "But there's something I want to make clear. Although I'm very handsome, it's impossible between us." Zioyu looked stunned. "I've only seen you as a little brother." It was Ren Zaiasu's turn to be stunned. "Ha ha ha, this is so awkward." Ren Zaiasu immediately led Yan Liayuan back to their shack. He stared at Yan Liayuan as they walked back. "It's all your fault for always babbling nonsense about that to me." Yan Liayuan surreptitiously turned around and winked at Zioyu. When Zioyu saw Yan Liayuan's face, she started laughing. All her unhappy feelings seemed to vanish into thin air. She squatted on the ground and stared at that half of the bone knife for a long time before heading to sleep with a smile on her face. Meanwhile, Ren Zaiasu closed his eyes and took a detailed observation of the inside of the palace. He also checked out what the typewriter had typed onto the leather parchment. A side quest. How interesting. Getting 2 basic skill duplication scrolls was extremely useful to Ren Zaiasu. He had always thirsted for knowledge. With just one of these scrolls, he could now readily learn an existing skill from someone. As such, Ren Zaiasu regarded them as treasures. Although it was used to learn a random skill, and he might end up learning something useless, the advanced firearms proficiency he learned had already given him a sweet taste of things to come. However, what attracted Ren Zaiasu to come to explore the palace was not these 2 skill duplication scrolls, but what the palace had mentioned at the end. A side quest. Since it was only a side quest, then it should not be something too important or was something that took a brief amount of time to complete. However, Ren Zaiasu clearly heard what the voice from the palace had said at that time. Due to the loss of your weapon, a special. So this quest had something to do with a weapon, right? Due to the loss of your weapon, a special side quest has been activated. Collect 100 sincere gratitudes to unlock a new weapon. In addition, you can use the gratitudes gained in exchange for items. Ren Zaiasu looked bewildered. Why does this side quest feel so weird? Collect gratitudes, and they had to be sincere too. It should be easy for him to collect thanks, but this was made difficult by the fact that they needed to be sincere. Besides, thanks could even be used as currency. More importantly, what kinds of items could it purchase? He continued reading the leather parchment and was astonished to see new words appearing on it from time to time. Gratitude received from Lai Zioyu, +1. Ren Zaiasu was pleased to know that he had not saved an ingrate. If only he were required to collect negative emotions instead, that would have been great. He knew that he could easily cause the entire townspeople to max out on their negativity for him with no effort at all. But he would have to make do with what the palace needed him to do. Ren Zaiasu suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yan Liayuan. "Liayuan, say thank you to me." Yan Liayuan was stunned. "Bro, don't be like this. You're making me a little scared." "What are you scared of?" Ren Zaiasu snapped. "Hurry up and say it." Yan Liayuan thought for a while and said, "Thank you for taking care of me all this while." Gratitude received from Yan Liayuan, +1. Ren Zaiasu was overjoyed. "Is it this simple? Come on, thank me a few more times," Ren Zaiasu said. Yan Liayuan suddenly felt at a loss for words. Thank you." Ren Zaiasu was disappointed this time. It looked like he could not keep getting thanked repeatedly. The main focus was still on the gratitude needing to be sincere. He raised his head in dissatisfaction and looked at Yan Liayuan. "You're not being sincere." "No, that's not right. Your emotions are not correct." "Say it again." "It's still not right. You have to let your emotions build up." Come. Yes, this is the expression. Try it again. Sincerity can work wonders. Try again. Put more emotion into the way you say it. Yan Liayuan nearly collapsed. He said with a dry mouth, "Bro, this is your skill. It feels like your skill really takes a toll on the voice." On this very night, Ren Zaiasu insisted on testing the gratitude system with Yan Liayuan throughout the night. In the end, he still only received 1 sincere gratitude from him. But with this gratitude, he now had 2 token coins in total. The token had a heart engraved on it with line of words on the reverse side. "A grateful heart, thankful to you for accompanying me in life and giving me the courage to be myself. A grateful heart, thankful for fate. As flowers bloom and wither, I remain appreciative." Ren Zaiasu smacked his lips, thinking that it flowed well. At this moment, the showroom cabinets in the palace that were originally shrouded in a black mist saw some changes. On the left side of the typewriter, the black mist finally dissipated from one of the cabinets and revealed something within. A vending machine. Ren Zaiasu was stunned for quite a while. He wondered what its function was since this was the first time he saw it. He hadn't come across something like it before in the outside world, as no such thing existed in the current day. However, he knew what the words on the vending machine said: coin slot. There were no other options on it. Since there was only a coin slot available, He did not need to think further and just inserted a token into it. Clink, the token with a heart engraving was slotted into the machine. Then it started to activate with a rumble. After that, a small bottle about the size of a palm rolled out. Ren Zaiasu took it out and had a look. The vial was only labeled with the word drug. Come on, you should at least tell me what illness this is for, right? Ren Zaiasu hesitated for a moment. When he thought about it and opened his eyes, he was holding the vial of medicine in his hand. But when that thought vanished, the vial of medicine disappeared as well. Yan Liayuan was stunned at the sight. Bro, are you performing magic? Ren Zaiasu ignored him. He decisively pulled off the cloth bandaging the wound on his hand to reveal an already infected wound. Extravasated blood had surrounded the wound for quite a while now, and interstitial fluid was continuously flowing out. Ren Zaiasu knew that if he did not apply medicine to it in time, the wound would fester, and he would go down with a fever soon after. After applying it, Ren Zaiasu felt a little regretful. The vial was only labeled with the word drug. But what if it turned out to be poisonous? However, his worries did not come to pass. After applying the ointment onto the wound, Ren Zaiasu immediately felt the initial burning sensation in the wound disappear. The anti-inflammatory medicine given by Zaiaoyu had been saved since he no longer needed it. Anti-inflammatory medicine must be taken for 3 days straight, while this ointment immediately worked wonders. An anti-inflammatory pill was worth 200 yuan each, and Ren Zaiasu roughly estimated that if he were to use this vial of ointment in place of the anti-inflammatory medicine, its value would be easily worth millions. Then Ren Zaiasu spun around and looked at Yan Liayuan. He firmly demanded, "Help me think. What can I do to quickly gain other people's gratitude? Let's go, I'm sending you to school." When Ren Zaiasu and Yan Liayuan reached the school, Zhang Jinglin was already in the classroom cleaning the blackboard. He nearly jumped when he turned around and saw Ren Zaiasu and Yan Liayuan standing there. They had very deep and dark circles under their eyes that made them look like ghosts. "What happened to the two of you?" Zhang Jinglin asked with some uncertainty. Yan Liayuan tried to explain. "My brother insisted on." However, before Yan Liayuan could finish speaking, Ren Zaiasu slapped him upside the head and cut him off. Ren Zaiasu then said, "It's nothing, we just didn't sleep well." "Oh?" Zhang Jinglin did not try to pry into their private affairs. He asked, "Have you thought about what you'll be teaching for today's lesson? It will be your first day as the substitute teacher." "Yes, I have." Ren Zaiasu nodded. For most of the day, he would be sitting in the classroom as a student until it was time for the last period in the afternoon when he would take over as the substitute teacher to teach the survival lesson. When it came time for the last period, Zhang Jinglin started worrying about Ren Zaiasu not having any experience in teaching, so he sat down in the back row of the class to give him some support. When Ren Zaiasu walked up to the podium, the class monitor shouted, "All rise." Then everyone said loudly, "Good afternoon, teacher." It was at this moment that Ren Zaiasu suddenly said, "Don't you guys think that it's tough for Mr. Zhang to teach us? We're all allowed to sit down during the lessons, but Mr. Zhang has to stand all day." In such circumstances, how could the students say that it was not tough? As Zhang Jinglin was still around, they could only agree. Then Ren Zaiasu said, "So shouldn't we be showing our gratitude for Mr. Zhang?" "Yes," the students answered in unison. Yan Liayuan's expression changed as he cheered madly in his mind. "Here it comes." Ren Zaiasu nodded in satisfaction. "Then from now on, there will be no need to say good afternoon, teacher. We will say thank you, teacher instead." Zhang Jinglin was dumbfounded throughout this as he did not understand what Ren Zaiasu was trying to do. "All right, everyone, please sit down. Let's give it a try," Ren Zaiasu said with a smile. "All rise." "Thank you, teacher," the students said in unison again. However, when Ren Zaiasu had an internal look at the typewriter in the palace, he was sorely disappointed. None of these little bastards were actually being sincere when thanking their teacher. Was it so difficult to show sincere gratitude to educators these days? This wouldn't do. He had to come up with another way now that his first attempt had failed. However, failure was not something that Ren Zaiasu was unfamiliar with. Accepting his failures with grace was actually one of his greatest strengths. After much thinking, Ren Zaiasu still felt that being a teacher was the easiest way to gain the gratitude of others. However, he had neglected one problem. While he was very eager to learn and was very thirsty for knowledge, it was because he was born into abnormal times that lacked knowledge. This was what caused him to be so hungry to learn. The more one lacked something, the more one desired it. However, the things that he desired were not necessarily the same as what the students desired. The students who could attend school in such an era were mostly from families with a rather good background. All of them were living with the blessings of their parents. These kids had been attending school for several years now, and the most annoying person to them would be their teacher, since he would make them recite from textbooks and give them homework. The students stared blankly at him and thought to themselves, this son of a bitch just keeps on fucking going. Even Zhang Jinglin couldn't bear it anymore. He went out to the yard to chop up a cabbage and made dinner. A student who could not stand it any longer said, "Son of a teacher, if you're not going to end class soon, it'll be dark out and it won't be safe to be in town." The student was still a little afraid of this person who was well known in town for being ruthless. That was the reason he did not dare to challenge him directly. Ren Zaiasu was taken aback. He thought, instead of showing your gratitude, you're asking the teacher to end class. However, he understood that safety came first. So when Ren Zaiasu saw the sky darkening, he could only helplessly wave his hand and say, "Class dismissed." "Thank you, teacher. Thank you, teacher." The students started swarming out of class. When two of the students thanked Ren Zaiasu for saying class dismissed, they were truly thankful. If class still didn't get dismissed, it would have become unbearable for them. Ren Zaiasu suddenly noticed two more gratitude tokens appear in the palace and was overjoyed. Like he knew what the students were thanking him for. All he felt was that he'd done a great job teaching them. Yan Liayuan said as he pulled a long face, "Can you stop making the lessons run late?" On the way back, Yan Liayuan was sulking and ignoring Ren Zaiasu. He had originally planned to stroll around town with Ren Zaiasu after school. But in the end, it wasn't to be. When they passed by a pawn shop at the city gate, Yan Liayuan tugged on Ren Zaiasu's sleeve and pointed at it. Ren Zaiasu was surprised to see Zaiaoyu in there. She seemed to be talking to the shopkeeper. Ren Zaiasu led Yan Liayuan a little bit closer. They could hear Zaiaoyu saying to the shopkeeper, "My pair of earrings are very valuable. Can't you give me a little more for them?" The shopkeeper smiled flippantly at Zaiaoyu. "Actually, you don't have to pawn it. Why would you have to?" He shut his mouth before he finished talking because he saw Ren Zaiasu walking towards the pawn shop. Word of last night's incident had already spread all over the town, and everyone knew that Lai Zaiaoyu was now very close to Ren Zaiasu. It didn't mean that just because this was a survival of the fittest era, everyone would naturally become more ferocious. In fact, every era would always have its fair share of weaklings and ruthless people. And most of the time, those who were ruthless would survive better. The shopkeeper was a weakling, and a weakling feared the strong and would only dare to bully the weak. The person that Ren Zaiasu had killed last night was well known in town as a ruthless person. So Ren Zaiasu had become the most ruthless of the ruthless. The shopkeeper's gaze became shifty as he pretended to drink some water. He wasn't sure if Ren Zaiasu had overheard what he had just said. Ren Zaiasu counted 620 yuan from his pocket and stuffed it into Zaiaoyu's hand. "You don't have to sell your belongings. This is the money for the 3 anti-inflammatory pills that you gave me last night." As Lai Zaiaoyu did not have a source of income now, she had no choice but to fritter away her savings. However, Ren Zaiasu could not bear to see her in such a miserable state. Lai Zaiaoyu wanted to return the money to Ren Zaiasu, but he said, "I was already planning to use the money to buy some medicine anyway, so you should keep it." After Ren Zaiasu luckily escaped from the wolves last year, he did not mention to anyone how he made it back alive. However, it was a fact that he only survived because of the medicine given by Lai Zaiaoyu. Without the antibiotics and anti-inflammatory pills, he would have been dead long ago. Therefore, what he owed to Lai Zaiaoyu was not just a few pills, but his life. Ren Zaiasu said to Zaiaoyu in a serious tone, "Don't worry. From now on, as long as there's meat for me to eat, I'll make sure there will be soup for you to drink." Yan Liayuan whispered, "Bro, you've said it wrong. Shouldn't all of us be eating meat together? Why, then, has it turned into you eating meat while the rest of us only get soup to drink? Besides, we don't even have any meat at home." "Oh." Ren Zaiasu nodded and put it another way to Zaiaoyu. "From now on, as long as I have soup to drink, there will be bowls for you to wash." Yan Liayuan was confused. "All right, I'll wash the bowls and do the laundry for you too." When she said this, she did not consider if there would be enough water to go around for all of them. In any case, she agreed to it. The shopkeeper pouted as he looked at the 3 of them walk out. He turned around and said to his shop assistant, "Don't ever provoke him, you hear?" Right when the trio stepped out of the shop, they heard someone shout, "Doctor, please save my husband. If he dies, our family won't survive." They saw a middle-aged woman kneeling and kowtowing to the town's only doctor in front of the clinic. However, the doctor sneered. "If you don't have any money, what makes you think you can see the doctor? If you save him, our whole family will thank you for your great kindness." The woman sobbed. "The old doctor was such a benevolent man when he was still around. As his son, you must also be very benevolent. My father's benevolence was his business. Then the doctor turned around and slammed the clinic's door shut. A man was lying beside the woman, his stomach bleeding non-stop. Renzayasu did not approach them nor be the good Samaritan this time around. In fact, he could tell that the man had already died. He calmly said as he looked on, "Liayuan, remember everything that you've just witnessed. This is reality." Dark clouds loomed on the horizon before night fell. The acid rain is coming. Let's hurry back home, Renzayasu said with an impassive expression. The woman was still crying and shouting, but no one cared about them. The man did not look like he had suffered the injury due to an accident. Renzayasu could easily tell that it was a knife wound, so he was sure that the man did not accidentally get injured at the factory, but was killed in a fight. When they got back to their shack, the acid rain came and went just as quickly. Yan Liayuan suddenly said as he sat on the bedroll, "Bro, you want the sincere gratitudes of other people, right? Being a doctor seems like it's an easy way to gain more gratitude." Wait a moment. Renzayasu suddenly felt that he had missed something. Although he did not have any medical skills, he could learn them. The 2 skill duplication scrolls awarded by his mind palace were still available. By using one of these scrolls, he should be able to learn another person's medical skill, right? The next day, Renzayasu did not go to school when he awoke. After scarfing down 2 bites of black bread, he went and crouched at the clinic's door and waited for it to open. In the end, the clinic opened late. Renzayasu waited until the afternoon, but the clinic still remained closed. In the afternoon, when the stronghold's clock rang to signal that it was 2 p.m., the young doctor leisurely opened the door from the inside and stretched himself under the sun. But before he could stretch his entire body, he was startled by the presence of Renzayasu, who was crouching at the entrance. "Are you here to see the doctor? And did you bring any money?" the doctor asked. The doctor did not even bother asking what illness Renzayasu was suffering from. "If you're not here to see the doctor, what are you doing squatting at my front door?" Renzayasu silently used one of the skill duplication scrolls in his palace. He saw the skill duplication scroll made from leather parchment spontaneously combust and instantly burn to nothing. One of the target's skills will be randomly copied. Randomly copied target's bragging skill. Do you want to learn it? Renzayasu was dumbfounded on the spot. Why would I learn bragging? He had almost forgotten that the skill duplication scroll could only randomly copy another person's skill for him to learn. It wasn't something that he had control over. But the problem was, why the fuck would you even have a skill like bragging? Something like this can even be considered a skill. You fucking useless piece of shit. Renzayasu gave the doctor a dirty stare and felt that the man was an awfully disgusting person. However, since he was here to steal his occupation, he couldn't possibly be beating him up after trying to do so, right? That wouldn't be cool. The doctor felt a little uncomfortable being stared at. Just as he was about to say something, he finally remembered who Renzayasu was. Renzayasu never came to his clinic to see him. However, both of them had heard about the other. One of them was the only doctor in town, while the other was a well-known ruthless individual. Then he used the second skill duplication scroll. One of the target's skills will be randomly copied. Randomly copied target's deception skill. Do you want to learn it? Learn, my ass. What the hell is this? Renzayasu glared at the young doctor. He has no medical skill. What the fuck? Mother. Renzayasu wanted to smash the large cauldron that he was carrying right then and there. He had carried the pot with him when he came out this morning. No wonder you're so fucking good at deception. Damn it. So it turns out that you don't have any medical skills at all and have been swindling people all this time. How did the old doctor get such a good-for-nothing son? This guy was utterly relying on the reputation of the old doctor to get by. Since there wasn't a second doctor in town, he had no qualms about swindling others. If his patients managed to survive, then good for them. For those who did not, the people around here were used to death anyway. After all, there were also some patients that the old doctor couldn't save. Renzayasu unwittingly looked at the skin between his thumb and index finger. The infected wound had scabbed over today. So that black ointment not only reduces inflammation, it can even quickly heal a wound. Wait a minute. Renzayasu got an idea on how he could become a doctor. If that person at the clinic could become a doctor through deception and bragging, why couldn't he also become a doctor? This was especially true as he had a miracle medicine on him now. Wouldn't it be fine if he just opened a clinic that specialized in knife wounds? He could just stitch up the patient and then apply some black ointment onto it and the job would be done. Back when the old doctor was still alive, he mentioned that he would not do suturing because he did not have the necessary sterilization equipment. If outside bacteria stayed in the body, they could kill the patient, so it would be useless even if he did stitch them up. The old doctor understood this. However, it was different for Ren Zaiasu. He did not have to worry about this at all. On their way back home that night, Ren Zaiasu could see that the lights were on in their shack from a distance away. He hurriedly went over and lifted the curtain door. When he stepped inside, he was surprised to see Zaiaoyu sitting in their broken chair and sewing their clothes for them. There was even corn porridge and cooked wild vegetables next to her, which she had made for them. They usually left their clothing in the shack since no one would steal them. Even if someone stole the clothes, the thief would have to wear them out someday. Once they did that, they would get recognized. It would be a surprise if Ren Zaiasu did not beat the thief to death. When Zaiaoyu saw them return, she smiled and said, "Sorry that I came in without your permission. I saw that your clothes were ripped, so I decided to sew them up for you. Quick, eat dinner." Yan Liayuan reached his hand out, wanting to scoop out some porridge. This meal was considered a luxury in town. Normally, they would only eat black bread or potatoes for their meals. However, Ren Zaiasu slapped Yan Liayuan's hand. "Have you thanked big sister Zaiaoyu yet?" Yan Liayuan still behaved himself in front of Ren Zaiasu. "Thank you, big sister Zaiaoyu." Zaiaoyu quickly said, "Stop hitting Liayuan. I can spoil him now, but no one will spoil him when he's on his own," Ren Zaiasu explained. Then he also said in a serious tone, "Thank you, big sister Zaiaoyu." "You're welcome." Zaiaoyu smiled and said, "What do you two usually like having for dinner?" Yan Liayuan said, "We don't usually eat dinner." "How can that do? You're both still growing," Zaiaoyu said. For some reason, Ren Zaiasu suddenly felt that Zaiaoyu should have been their sister all this while. No one would say such words to them in the past. "Big sister Zaiaoyu," Ren Zaiasu asked, "your sewing skills are great. Why don't you come over and help us when our knife wound clinic opens for business?" "A knife wound clinic?" Zaiaoyu was stunned. "Why do you suddenly want to open a clinic that specializes in knife wounds?" "Because I have a medicinal herb formula for treating knife wounds. It can reduce inflammation and help wounds heal quicker." After Ren Zaiasu finished, he showed the wound on his hand to her. Zaiaoyu took a look at it and noticed that Ren Zaiasu's wound had already formed into a scab. Zaiaoyu thought for a moment and said, "But there are much fewer fights happening in town these days. In the past, more than 10 people would get injured each day, but only one person gets injured every few days now." This was indeed true, excluding the person killed by Ren Zaiasu and the man at the clinic entrance yesterday. It seemed that there were really no fights happening recently. The cases of night break-ins weren't counted because there wouldn't be any survivors left most of the time. In the dead of the night, Ren Zaiasu checked his harvest thus far. 2 days ago, Zaiaoyu, Yan Liayuan, and the 2 students had each earned him a gratitude token. All in all, he had collected 4 gratitude token coins. However, as he used up one of them, he only had 3 gratitude tokens left and a small bottle of ointment with 2 dosages remaining. Ren Zaiasu decided to name this ointment the Black Medicine as it was simple and easy to remember. In Ren Zaiasu's opinion, he could use 1 gratitude token in exchange for 1 bottle of Black Medicine, and each bottle of Black Medicine could be used to treat 3 people. In the long run, having 1 bottle that could get 3 gratitudes in exchange would surely guarantee him a profit. By exchanging the gratitude tokens for the Black Medicine and selling them, it seemed that it would slow down his progress of unlocking the weapon. But the more Black Medicine he exchanged with his gratitude tokens, the more gratitude tokens he would get in return, right? This was an exponential growth, and it might even help to unlock the weapon faster. Today, he went out to the wilderness not because he needed to hunt, but to pretend that he was gathering medicinal herbs. Ren Zaiasu was a very cautious person. Since he claimed that he had a herb formula, he would have to gather the herbs. Only then would he not be suspected by others. When he came back to town, it was still noon. When Ren Zaiasu carried a large bunch of medicinal herbs back, someone he knew asked, "Ren Zaiasu, why are you carrying all these weeds around?" "Are these weeds?" Ren Zaiasu stared at him and said, "These are medicinal herbs." Medicinal herbs. The person asking was dumbfounded. As someone born and raised right here in town, wouldn't he know what those plants were? No one had ever thought of them as medicinal herbs before. Ren Zaiasu said conspiratorially, "As long as you add in different fractions, you can concoct a medicine that can be used to treat wounds. How do you think I recovered from my past injuries?" Zaiaoyu was currently sewing Ren Zaiasu and Yan Liayuan's clothes. When she looked up and saw Ren Zaiasu walking in with a large bunch of medicinal herbs, she put the patchwork in her hands down. "What are all these?" "These are the medicinal herbs used to concoct the secret formula," Ren Zaiasu explained. Ren Zaiasu set up the cauldron and started a fire. He added some water in and pretended to concoct the medicinal herb formula. In the process of concocting this formula, the costliest part was actually the water. Water was a much more valuable resource than the firewood used or the weeds that were put in. He even purposely lifted the shack's curtain door to let the people in town see what he was doing. A lot of people saw Renzayasu brewing a herb concoction, but no one dared to approach him to ask what it was. Renzayasu was starting to feel unhappy about this. The reason he lifted the curtain door was so that people would come over to ask him what he was doing. When that happened, he would be able to promote his medicinal concoction. After waiting for a long time, no one approached him to ask about it. Renzayasu pulled a long face as he looked at a skinny man who was surreptitiously lurking outside the entrance. You. The skinny man pointed at himself. Me. Yes, come over here. Renzayasu waited until the skinny man warily came closer. Then he said, ask me what I am doing already. The skinny man was speechless. So was Zayawayu. Go on, ask, Renzayasu urged him. What are you doing? The skinny man asked. With his motive achieved, Renzayasu broke into a smile. He said with a kind look, I'm brewing a herbal concoction. I usually brew this type of medicinal herb concoction when I get injured. It not only reduces inflammation and stops pain, it can also make the wound heal faster. In the past, I kept this medicine hidden from everyone. But now I've realized my mistake. So I've decided that I want to make the concoction and share it with everyone. From today onwards, I'll open a clinic that specializes in treating wounds. Is anyone injured and in need of treatment? The people standing outside were stunned by the speech that Renzayasu had just given. However, everyone just looked at one another before dispersing. No one believed him. What a joke. Renzayasu, you might be impressive, but to suddenly claim that you can treat people's wounds is bullshit. Everyone in the entire neighborhood knows that you pulled through by enduring your injuries in the past. But now you're suddenly telling us that you have a medicinal herb concoction. Like we'd believe you. Left with no other choice, Renzayasu went to find other opportunities in town. It wasn't until every factory had ended work in the afternoon that Renzayasu finally spotted a skinny man with a cut on his hand. Renzayasu was overjoyed. Brother, did you injure your hand during work? I have a wonder drug here. Do you want to try some? The skinny man looked at him warily as he felt that Renzayasu's tone did not sound reputable. No need. Come, try it. Renzayasu went forward and held the skinny man down. The black stuff on Renzayasu's hand looked a little dubious. Renzayasu clenched his teeth and said, for the sake of publicity, I'll treat your wound for free this time. All right, put away your knife first. When Renzayasu came out looking for patients to treat, he had brought a bone knife with him. Bro, Yan Liayuan asked Renzayasu, did you really treat someone for free this afternoon? That's so unlike you. Don't ask. Kill yourself if you do, Renzayasu said bitterly. Honestly speaking, he really wanted to promote the black medicine to everyone. He would largely have to depend on this method to gain the gratitude of others. Moreover, this medicine was also the core of his plan to make money in the short term. Old Wang, what are you doing here so early? I haven't been out to catch any sparrows lately, Renzayasu said unhurriedly as he put the bucket on the ground. He glanced into the shack. Quick-witted Yan Liayuan had already raised his bone knife to guard against Old Wang. It was only after he saw Renzayasu that he finally lowered the bone knife. When Wang Fugui saw Renzayasu, his eyes shimmered. Oh, Zayasu, you're finally back. I came over this early in the morning just to look for you. Do you still have that medicine? You can give them with me. I'll sell it for you. You want to sell it for me? No way. Renzayasu shook his head. I can't have a middleman taking a cut of the profits. This town is so small already. Yesterday, Ironhead got a little suspicious after returning home. He wanted to know what you applied to his wound. So he smelled it but couldn't make out what it was. After that, he licked it, trying to taste what it was made with. Guess what happened as a result? Renzayasu wondered what the hell was wrong with that guy. He'd even licked it. There was nothing wrong with the black medicine's effectiveness. When Ironhead inspected his wound that night, he knew that Renzayasu did not lie to him. It was indeed a good medicine. Driven by curiosity, he was hoping to find out what it was made with. Wang Fugui continued. In the end, he and his wife went at it all night, all the way until this morning. That medicine of yours is way too effective. Renzayasu was shocked. Yan Liayuan, who was in the shack, was also shocked by what he heard. Renzayasu had also wondered whether the black medicine could be taken orally and if there would be any side effects. He felt that maybe it could be taken orally, but he did not dare to try it out himself. You get the special acquaintance discount, 600 yuan. Highway robbery, Wang Fugui said angrily. For now, the amount of black medicine that Ren Zaiasu had left was only enough for a one-time treatment of wounds. However, based on Old Wang's description of the medicine being effective with just one lick, the remaining portion should still be enough for quite a few more licks. However, the sought-after effects of this medicine when taken orally were not driven by necessity, so he could not sell it for too much. Wang Fugui then counted out 600 yuan and paid it to Ren Zaiasu. He did not even try to haggle over the price. Ren Zaiasu could never have expected that the market for his black medicine would get opened in such a manner. His initial plan was to become a doctor so that he could practice medicine to help the people. He never thought he would become an aphrodisiac supplier instead. Wang Fugui spun around and said to Ren Zaiasu, "Thank you for this." Gratitude received from Wang Fugui, +1. Ren Zaiasu was speechless. He finally had 4 gratitude tokens again, although this gratitude token was earned a little differently from how Ren Zaiasu had expected. Old Wang felt that Ren Zaiasu did not know the value of the medicine, but he did. Which place needed this black medicine's effect most when it was taken orally? Was it the men in town? Nope. Although the men in town barely had enough food to eat, with some of them even skin and bones, everyone was still performing physical labor. Even if they were skinny, their health was actually great. With enough exercise, maintaining the body's metabolism and functions of organs would not be difficult. As such, the men in town did not really need this black medicine. The people who needed the black medicine most were actually the aristocracy in the stronghold. Wang Fugui furtively handed over the black medicine to the administrator who had been sent by the stronghold. The town administrators were people who had knowledge of all the ongoings in town. Their daily work was to gain insight into any unusual activities happening in town. Hence, this administrator also knew about the incident from last night when Ironhead licked the black medicine. However, the administrator did not use it either. After he went back at night, he regifted it to his superior. Nobody knew where the small porcelain bottle with the black medicine eventually ended up. Ren Zaiasu had no knowledge of any of this. He used another gratitude token in exchange for another vial of black medicine. Then he had Zaiaoyu buy a white linen cloth from town. Afterwards, he had her sew the word clinic onto it using black thread, as well as the words kind doctor specializing in wounds in a smaller size underneath. With that, the clinic began operating. Although there was no business at his clinic yet, he could not afford to be away from here. If a patient came to see the doctor, Zaiaoyu could not handle it alone. He would have liked to sit in the bright and spacious classroom like Yan Liayuan and learn. But if he went to school to study, what would happen to Yan Liayuan and Zaiaoyu? In this family, there had to be someone who was willing to sacrifice their aspirations. The next day, Ren Zaiasu was sitting and resting in the shack with the curtain door lifted wide open. At this moment, someone sprinted over from the other end of the dirt track with a bleeding arm. Ren Zaiasu's eyes lit up. "You might die if you don't get your injuries treated." However, that man did not even look at Ren Zaiasu. Everyone would still subconsciously head to the clinic to treat their injuries since that place was the more authoritative one. Besides, everyone's impression of Ren Zaiasu was still that drug dealer rather than someone who treats knife wounds. Then the long-awaited voice intoned from the palace in his mind. "Quest, successfully treat one patient." Ren Zaiasu stood up and said disconsolately, "I'm sorry." After that, Zaiaoyu saw Ren Zaiasu dash out of the shack. Less than a minute later, she saw him carrying that man back. Ren Zaiasu kindly said to the patient, "That doctor at the clinic is a quack. Do you know that by carrying you back here, I'm saving you?" As the man had been bleeding for a long time, he did not have any more strength. The man nearly crumpled with Ren Zaiasu holding him down firmly. At this moment, another 2 men ran over from the opposite side of the dirt track. Seeing their bodies stained with blood, Ren Zaiasu was stunned. "Did y'all get into a fight?" When the man who was being held down heard that, he explained, "No, it's the boiler at the factory. It exploded. The injuries that we sustained are light, so we could still run back here by ourselves. However, I'm afraid that some people died on the scene." Ren Zaiasu nodded in silence. In the present, no one would be so kind-hearted as to bring you to get your injuries treated in the event of an accident at the factory. They couldn't wish more than for you to die so that your belongings would go to them. "Come, big sister Zaiaoyu, sterilize the needle," Ren Zaiasu said. Although he was not worried about the inflammation, he still had to put on an act for the patient, right? After he said that, he went outside again. This time, he brought back another 2 men. Ren Zaiasu used both his hands and a leg to hold the 3 of them down. Now that they had been pinned down, they might as well stop resisting altogether. Then they saw Zaiaoyu put down the patchwork in her hands. She took the needle that she had been using to sew the clothes and placed it over the fire. As this needle was a little longer, she did not get burned while holding the other end. Do I just stitch them up? Zioyu asked timidly. Yes, just stitch their wounds like you're sewing clothes. Ren Zioasu smiled and said, it's quite simple. Zioyu mustered up her courage and proceeded to suture the wound on one of the patients. However, the skin sizzled, the smell of burning flesh accompanying it. The man trembled as he asked, I understand that you're using fire to sterilize the needle, but could you at least wait for the needle to cool before you start stitching? It was a mistake, Ren Zioasu explained with a smile. This is the first day of work for our nurse, so she doesn't know the exact procedures yet. Come, let's continue suturing. Big sister Zioyu treated as sewing clothes. Zioyu was not afraid of blood. Frankly, everyone in town was used to seeing people die all the time, so it wasn't such a big deal when they had to face minor injuries like these. Besides, she really enjoyed her current job. It wasn't that she liked seeing blood, but that she liked being a useful person. It was common knowledge in town that everyone had to be useful in the current environment as it was full of hardship and difficulties. Useless people would get abandoned sooner or later. This was the simplest logic for deciding who to live around. When Zioyu finished suturing, Ren Zioasu took out a small porcelain vial and applied the medicine onto the first patient's wound. My medicine is very precious, but I will not overcharge you for it. I'll just charge you the same fee as the clinic does, 600 yuan. I believe all of you should be able to afford it. The price of a cotton padded jacket was around 600 yuan. However, these workers' salaries per month were probably at around 22 to 28 yuan. This made the price of the goods sold relatively expensive to their salaries earned. But all of this was due to a supply and demand issue. The aristocracy in the stronghold could not wish more for these people to earn as little as possible for the rest of their lives. In that way, they would have to keep working earnestly for the aristocrats. Besides, these workers could not just drop everything and leave since they would not be able to survive in the wilderness. After the black medicine was applied to the wound of the first patient, his pain immediately stopped. He paid up very willingly as the fee would have been the same if he went to the clinic to treat his injury. When the patient who had just been treated was about to leave, Ren Zioasu said amiably, shouldn't you be saying thanks now that you've been treated? The man shuddered and quickly turned his head back and said, thank you. Ren Zioasu nodded in satisfaction. However, when he had a look in the palace, he was startled to find that he did not gain any additional gratitude tokens. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. The quest to successfully treat one patient was finally complete. Zioayu called out to him, the patient is escaping. Ren Zioasu smiled and said, it's okay. He won't get far since he's still injured. I'll go and bring him back. Zioayu and the remaining patient were speechless. While Ren Zioasu went out to catch the patient, Zioayu looked at the remaining patient and gently said, are you going to run away too? If you're also thinking of doing so, I'll suture you up afterwards. No, I'm not gonna run away. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 dexterity. Quest, successfully treat 10 patients. When Ren Zioasu heard this voice again, he froze, because he could feel his muscles that had swelled up earlier had now started to deflate by quite a bit. Dexterity was a way to increase the strength of the muscle fibers. Upon reaching the same level of power, it would help to lower the muscle mass. In this way, Ren Zioasu would not need to worry about looking like a beefcake. Ren Zioasu looked at the patient who had just attempted to run away. Do you understand now the benefits of the black medicine that I applied on you? It can stop your pain immediately, and the wound won't get inflamed afterwards either. I can't understand why you'd run away. The patient hemmed and hawed for a long time before finally saying, I don't have enough money. Ren Zioasu was pained. He said resentfully, why didn't you run faster then? All of a sudden, over a dozen people ran into town and shouted, this is bad. Something terrible has happened. Ren Zioasu frowned. He pulled one of them over and asked, what's going on? The scent of blood after the factory boiler explosion has attracted a pack of wolves. That man said disconcertedly, I don't know where the wolves came from, but there are a lot of them. How many is a lot? Ren Zioasu asked again. I'm afraid there are over 100 of them, at least. This was indeed terrible. It looked like the fate of the workers remaining at the factory was grim. The wolves hadn't appeared in over a year. During this time, everyone had almost forgotten about their threat. No one knew where they had gone to during this year-long disappearance, but now that they were back, their numbers had increased by several times. However, the wolves did not dare to come and ravage the town because of the tall walls. And on top of these walls, there were firearms and explosives. This was why the refugees had gathered outside of the walls and built a town around it. Meanwhile, Yan Liayuan looked outside curiously as he ate his food and said, Bro, how did you manage to survive back then? You've never talked about it before. Ren Zaiasu gave him a look but did not answer the question. Zioyu, who was beside them, also looked at Ren Zaiasu, although she did not ask him anything. That night, the stronghold city gate was suddenly opened. A loud rumbling could be heard as the stronghold's gate opened up. Then several hundred soldiers carrying loaded guns marched out. These were the private troops of Stronghold 113. Or to more aptly put it, they were the private army controlled by the King Consortium, the group behind Stronghold 113. The schoolteacher, Zhang Jinglin, once unwittingly mentioned that the Consortium was the actual controller of the stronghold these days. They had power over the lives of humans and possessed weapons that could be used to fight off the dangers of the outside world. With money and weapons, they were firmly in control of the entire stronghold. This was the first time Ren Zaiasu and Yan Liayuan had ever seen so many soldiers come out of the stronghold. Yan Liayuan was hiding in the shack and secretly watching the private army as they marched out of town. He muttered, "Bro, are those guns they're carrying on their backs?" Those black guns looked brutal and menacing. However, Ren Zaiasu was not surprised that he could recognize all of those weapons. Moreover, he had a feeling that, as long as he could get his hands on those firearms, he could use them to great effect immediately. The private army was not marching in an orderly fashion. There was an off-road vehicle leading the way, but the formation of the soldiers following it was a mess and could even be called chaotic. Someone from the private army complained, "Isn't it just some people dying at the factory? Why can't we head there tomorrow morning? Why do we have to go there and kill the wolves tonight?" "Shut up." The higher-ups ordered this mission. Someone glared at him. "What's there to be afraid of? It's not like those jack-offs in office can hear us anyway. They're probably still sleeping with women right now," that man grumbled. He then lit himself a thinly rolled cigarette. Ren Zaiasu once again caught a whiff of that unusual smell of cigarettes. He frowned as he started increasingly distrust the stronghold's private troops. When the sound of the private armies marching got further away, Ren Zaiasu shot to his feet and told Yan Liayuan, "Go to Big Sister Zioyu's shack tonight and stay there for a while. Come back only after I return." "Bro, where are you going?" Yan Liayuan asked in a stunned manner. By the time he finished asking, Ren Zaiasu had already quietly lifted the curtain door and gone out. A lot of people had gathered on the streets, so no one took any notice of Ren Zaiasu's whereabouts. Ren Zaiasu ran as fast as he could towards the factory. He was more familiar with this place than the private army was. And besides, the private army was marching there while he was running. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out in the darkness. Then a prolonged series of deafening gunshots rattled through the night. There was even the screaming of humans. Ren Zaiasu suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the sound. Clearly, the private army had encountered the wolves, and many of them were still getting attacked after firing their guns. Didn't they say the wolves were afraid of gunshots? Didn't they say it was an animal's instinct to avoid danger? Today, Ren Zaiasu gained a new awareness of something. Although beasts had evolved to become stronger, they had never been able to overcome their animal instincts. Rabbits still ate grass, and wolves were still afraid of gunshots. Unless everything had changed. There was an intense battle in the wilderness as the private army had not expected to encounter wolves. The wolves were extremely fierce and cunning, and it seemed like they had been waiting in ambush. At first, the troops thought that they could scare away the wolves by just firing their guns, but it turned out they were wrong. The wolves did not panic this time when they heard the gunshots. By the time the wolves appeared in front of them, the private troops were shocked to discover that these wolves were even bigger than they had imagined. They were the size of bison. Wait a minute. After these wolves attacked the factory, they waited in the only possible path that the private army would have to pass through. Why did it seem like they had been targeting these private troops from the very beginning? However, the private troops were trained soldiers. Before the casualties started piling up, they fell in and began to defend. Comparing the firearms of humans with the sharp teeth and claws of an animal, firearms would still come out on top in the end. The private army had dealt with the wolves on more than one occasion. In recent years, they had slowly started pulling back on their plans to encircle and keep the wolves suppressed after being instructed to do so by the people in charge. Of course, this also gave the wolves some respite. For some reason, as Ren Zaiasu listened to the gunshots, he found the cracks to be so pleasant that his adrenaline started pumping. The gunshots excited him. He didn't go and take a closer peek at the battle. All he knew was that if the wolves and the private army were fighting now, it would be safe for him to go to the factory. For the first time, he could get a complete sense of his newly obtained strength and dexterity. His muscle fibers tensed up and relaxed over and over again. This sort of feeling could only be described as invigorating. When Ren Zaiasu neared the factory, he finally slowed down. He hid in the darkness and approached it quietly. Renzai Asu was surprised to see many of the refugees' dead bodies lying around. It seemed like they had wanted to escape back to town but were caught by the wolves one after another. Only a minority of them were lucky enough to escape at the expense of their companions. Renzai Asu painstakingly examined their wounds. They looked like they had been bitten in the neck by the wolves and died immediately. However, the wolves did not feed on their corpses and seemingly left in a hurry. Renzai Asu thought for a while. He did not enter through the main entrance, instead climbing his way up a pipe on the outside of the factory building. Each time he passed by a window, he would scrupulously check if there were still any survivors inside. When Renzai Asu got to the top floor of the building, his heart sank. It didn't look like any survivors remained in the factory. The wolves had already swept through the entire factory, sparing no one. Where are the guns hidden? Renzai Asu wondered. The factory managers would definitely not place them where it would be easily accessible to others. Renzai Asu broke the glass window on the top floor and jumped into the building. He looked around and saw that the hallway was full of bloodstains and corpses. The large factory felt like a purgatory. All of a sudden, Renzai Asu realized something was off. All of the corpses looked like they had been running in the same direction when they were alive, as though something was guiding them towards it. What would attract people to run towards the same place at such a crucial time? Renzai Asu came to a conclusion. That place would either be the location of the weapons storage or a hiding place. He followed this path all the way until he ended up in the basement. Was this the emergency shelter? The more he walked forward, the more corpses there were. Renzai Asu could imagine what the scene looked like when everyone was trying to escape in panic from the wolves. They wanted to escape to a safe place, but they were not fast enough to outrun the wolves. Renzai Asu arrived at an iron door. Indeed, everyone was escaping towards this place because they wanted to get in. No matter how much the wolves had evolved, they were still only flesh and blood. It would still be rather difficult to break through an iron door several inches thick. Renzai Asu wondered if anyone was still behind the iron door. He hesitated for quite a while before he raised his fist and knocked on the blast door 3 times. Someone behind the iron door shouted happily, "Is that the private army? You've finally come to rescue me. I'll open the door right away." The rhythm of the knocking was obvious and could not have been made by a wild animal. As such, the person on the inside mistook Renzai Asu as a soldier from the private army that had been sent to rescue him. With a loud grinding sound, the iron door burst open and revealed a middle-aged man on the inside. He had a leg wound, and his pants were stained red with blood. Even as he opened the door, he was standing on just one leg. However, the moment the door opened, both parties took action. Renzai Asu bent low and prepared to rush him. When the middle-aged man saw that the person in front of him was not a soldier, his first reaction was to raise his pistol. The atmosphere grew tense. Renzai Asu stopped in front of the middle-aged man because the black muzzle of the pistol was pointed right at his forehead. The middle-aged man laughed. "So it's a little burglar who wants to take advantage of the situation, eh? I recognize you, you're Renzai Asu from town." Renzai Asu also recognized him. The middle-aged man was the factory manager, Wang Dingyang. "I recognize you too," Renzai Asu said as he straightened up as though nothing had happened. "Why are you the only person in there?" "No, you were the first person who fled here, and you closed the door immediately while keeping everyone else outside." Renzai Asu felt a sudden chill pass through him. No wonder there were bloody handprints all over the outside of the iron door. So it turned out that it was because of the refugees' crazy thumping on it. "You must be afraid that I'll tell everyone how you sold out everyone here and left them for dead, right?" Renzai Asu continued to laugh and say. Wang Dingyang sneered at him. As the pistol gave him tremendous courage, he had no fear at all. "How do you know that?" Renzai Asu pondered for a moment. The father knows his son the best. Wang Dingyang was confused. Then factory manager grew infuriated. "Do you think I won't kill you? I also know another thing," Renzai Asu said calmly. "What?" Wang Dingyang had a bad feeling about it. "I know you didn't disengage the safety on the gun, and it's too late for you to do so now." Wang Dingyang's pupils suddenly contracted. He had originally thought that it was the private army who came, so he didn't really think too much of it. But when he saw that it was Renzai Asu, and Renzai Asu had rushed in so decisively, he did not have enough time to disengage the safety. He had thought that he could easily frighten Renzai Asu because he felt that a refugee like him would not have seen a gun before or know how it worked. He thought that he would only feel fear with one pointed at him. However, Renzai Asu knew more about guns than the majority of people in Stronghold 113. He charged at Wang Dingyang like a cannonball, crushing Wang Dingyang's ribs. Even his gun was sent flying out of his hand. Wang Dingyang had nothing to rely on now. He laid on the ground, coughing up blood, and said, "Let me go. I'll tell you where I kept all my belongings. Tell me first and I'll let you go," Ren Zaiasu said calmly. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Wang Dingyang actually knew this was just a futile attempt to be let off. How could this teen possibly let him go? If Ren Zaiasu allowed him to leave, could he still survive in the vicinity of Stronghold 113? And when Wang Dingyang first learned of the existence of Ren Zaiasu, he was even referred to as Ruthless Ren Zaiasu. Your lungs have already been pierced by your broken ribs, so it's too late for you even if you go back to town now. Ren Zaiasu laughed. Although he was eager to get Wang Dingyang's belongings, it was clear that he would not tell him where he kept them. Ren Zaiasu wasted no time here. He did not know when the battle between the private army and the wolves would end. But if he dragged his feet around here any longer, it would not end well for him no matter which side arrived at the factory. The sound of a sharp weapon cutting through leather tore the air. Ren Zaiasu used the bone knife to imitate a wolf's claws slashing across Wang Dingyang's chest, creating fake wounds. He waited until he was certain Wang Dingyang's vital signs had stopped before he picked up the pistol and headed out. Ren Zaiasu also took the 2 magazines Wang Dingyang carried on him. There were a total of 36 bullets. By the time Ren Zaiasu left the factory, no one remained alive. Ren Zaiasu turned around and gazed at the building where a bloodbath had taken place. Behind him was the darkness of night. This was the world he lived in. "Bro, are you alright?" Yan Liayuan said eagerly when he saw Ren Zaiasu lift the curtain door and walk in. He circled around Ren Zaiasu to check if there were any bloodstains on him before he felt at ease. "I'm fine." While tying the bone knife back around his calf, Ren Zaiasu asked, "Did anything happen in town while I was away? Is the private army back yet?" "Some of them have returned. They brought some wounded soldiers back with them, as well as the dead bodies of their fellow soldiers and carcasses of the wolves. I heard that the rest of the troops continued on to the factory," Yan Liayuan said. Suddenly, a commotion brewed outside. Ren Zaiasu lifted the curtain door and watched what was happening. It turned out that a group of 10 soldiers from the private army had driven back in advance in an off-road vehicle. An officer in the vehicle said, "Anyone who volunteers any information on those who went out of town tonight will be handsomely rewarded." Ren Zaiasu was taken aback because he knew they were clearly looking for him. They must have already gone to the factory and looked around the place. Ren Zaiasu had thought that it would be impossible for a normal person to discover the phoniness of Wang Dingyang's wounds. However, there was still a crucial problem that could not be reconciled. Wang Dingyang's pistol had gone missing. If someone worked backwards upon discovering this problem, it would be easy to get clues on what had happened. This was something that Ren Zaiasu could not prevent. "Bro," Yan Liayuan got worried as he looked at Ren Zaiasu. "I'll be fine." Ren Zaiasu pushed Yan Liayuan's head back into the shack. Ren Zaiasu carefully recalled that he did not take the main road when he left town. If he remembered it accurately, no one should have any idea that he had gone out other than Yan Liayuan. Suddenly, a familiar voice shouted, "I know who went out in the middle of the night." Ren Zaiasu turned around and saw that it was the clinic's doctor, Yu Tong. He was looking at Ren Zaiasu with a smile on his face and standing very far away from him, as he was afraid that Ren Zaiasu would try to kill him. The private army's officer strolled over and asked, "Who?" "It's him, Ren Zaiasu. I saw him go out of town with my very own eyes," Yu Tong said with an arrogant smile. Ren Zaiasu did not deny this. He admitted, "At that time, the town's common privy was occupied by Hizong, so I had to go outside to relieve myself." The officer turned around and looked at Ren Zaiasu as he sneered, "Search." After he said that, Wang Fugui darted out before his soldiers could rush into the shack. "Wait a minute, he's someone who has been singled out by one of the aristocrats in the stronghold to be taken care of. You can't treat him like this." The officer was stunned. "What do you mean?" "In the afternoon, Boss Luo Lan from the stronghold specially ordered for him to be taken care of. Even Ren Zaiasu himself doesn't know about this yet. But as for why he is doing this, you'll have to ask Boss Luo yourself. It's not convenient for us to reveal it to you," Wang Fugui explained quickly. "Boss Luo." The officer was a little surprised. Everyone could tell from his reaction that he clearly knew the boss who went by the name of Luo Lan. In fact, it even seemed like he was a big shot in the stronghold. The officer thought for a moment and said, "Even if he is Boss Luo's guy, we must still search him. This is a very serious matter. I'll personally apologize and explain it to Boss Luo tonight." After saying that, the soldiers rushed into Ren Zaiasu's shack and rummaged through their belongings. Another 2 soldiers carried out a body search on Ren Zaiasu. 2 minutes later, the soldiers were all shaking their heads when the search did not turn up anything. The officer looked at Ren Zaiasu. Bring me to the place where you took a dump. Ren Zaiasu frowned as he made his way out of town. Ren Zaiasu could finally heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was well prepared. Before he left town, he observed the surroundings and thought of a reason before he came back. Not only did he bury the gun outside of town, he also laid the last of the situational evidence to cover his lie. By taking a dump right outside of town, he turned his gaze to Yutong, who had been following them. Yutong pissed his pants when he saw the daggers in Ren Zaiasu's eyes. Boss Luo specifically sent someone to bring word to the town administrators to look out for you. Ren Zaiasu was taken aback. Who's Boss Luo? Does he know me? Wang Fugui winked at him and whispered, that medicine of yours. Boss Luo likes it a lot. Ren Zaiasu was speechless. Ren Zaiasu realized that the black medicine that Wang Fugui purchased from him had been sent into the stronghold. Boss Luo has given his word that as long as you hand over a fixed amount of the black medicine on time each month, he will ensure that you'll be free from trouble here outside the stronghold, Wang Fugui said with a smile. Suddenly, Ren Zaiasu got an idea. Is Boss Luo very influential and powerful in the stronghold? Then can you ask Boss Luo to help get us into the stronghold? Ren Zaiasu thought that if an influential person like Boss Luo, who had great authority in the stronghold, helped them, it wouldn't be too difficult to get them in, right? We're all contaminated, so how can we be allowed inside the stronghold? Wang Fugui said with a sad frown. Besides, if you get into the stronghold, who's going to pick the wild medicinal herbs for Boss Luo? That same night, Yan Liayuan suddenly ran a high fever. Ren Zaiasu exchanged a bottle of black medicine and tried applying it on Yan Liayuan's forehead, but it did not make his fever go down. Ren Zaiasu sat beside the bed and looked at the feeble Yan Liayuan. He said with a sigh, you didn't have to make a wish for this. Don't make any wishes without me asking you to do so in the future, understand? The fevers that you get as a result could end up killing you. Yan Liayuan could barely open his eyes as he said weakly, but what am I to do if something happens to you? Ren Zaiasu lowered his head and thought for a long time. Don't be stubborn. I will definitely ensure that we'll lead a comfortable life together someday. The next morning, when Ren Zaiasu went to town to fetch water, he was surprised to hear a piece of news. Yutong had packed all of his belongings and money and run away in the night. He would rather face the dangers lurking in the wilderness than face Ren Zaiasu. Someone said that Yutong had gone to Stronghold 114 because it was the closest to Stronghold 113 and was also in the opposite direction of where the wolves appeared. Old Wang came back with a wooden box tucked under his armpit. Old Wang said, "Congratulations, Ren Zaiasu. You get to live in a brick house just like that." During the conversation, Old Wang handed a gift box to Ren Zaiasu. I got a small present for you and Liayuan. Since both of you are still growing, eating this will help strengthen your bodies. Curious, Ren Zaiasu opened it and was surprised to see a white lump. What is this? You don't know what this is, right? I've kept this bird's nest for many years, Wang Fugui explained. It's really nourishing. Ren Zaiasu had only heard of this stuff. He had never seen it before. However, he had always had doubts about it. Mr. Zhang Jinglan said that bird's nest is made from a swiftlet's saliva, but I don't think that the viscosity of saliva can be that thick, so it's probably made of phlegm. Wang Fugui was annoyed. Don't make my gift sound so disgusting, he said unhappily. Then what about blood bird's nest one? What is that made of? Ren Zaiasu gave it some thought. Phlegm tainted by blood. Give it back to me if you don't want it. You don't have to make it sound so disgusting, Wang Fugui said as he tried to snatch the bird's nest back. Ren Zaiasu happily covered up the bird's nest box and threw it into the shack. Come on, it was just a joke. I didn't mean to make it sound disgusting. Old Wang pulled him aside and said, you should move into the clinic as soon as possible. There are 2 other houses attached behind the clinic, and it comes with a yard measuring over a dozen square meters. A lot of people are already eyeing the place. Okay, Ren Zaiasu nodded. In the morning, Ren Zaiasu and Saioyu threw their belongings together in a pack and headed to the clinic. Who would want to live in a shack when they could live in a brick house with bright windows and clean tables? He had already planned for Yan Liayuan and himself to live in one of the 2 rear houses, while Saioyu could live in the other. Saioyu had initially lived in a brick house. After that, she moved into a shack for the sake of these 2 younger brothers. Now that Saioyu could live in a brick house again, one of Ren Zaiasu's wishes could be considered fulfilled. But when Ren Zaiasu walked into the clinic carrying Yan Liayuan on his back, he was dumbfounded. He saw a banner hanging in the middle of the clinic's wall. It was emblazoned with the words "Magic Hands Restore Spring" from Luo Lan. According to Wang Fugui, as long as the banner was hanging in the clinic, no one would dare to do anything to Ren Zaiasu. But of course, Ren Zaiasu would first have to not involve himself in anything that went against Luo Lan's interests. This would act as a talisman for them, even though it made Ren Zaiasu feel very uncomfortable. You haven't been out to gather any medicinal herbs for the past few days. Or do you happen to still have any of that medicine left? Yes, I've got anti-inflammatory pills, anesthetics, and cough and mucus medicine, Ren Zaiasu said with a smile. I mean, do you still have that black medicine available? Wang Fugui was slightly embarrassed. Didn't you just buy some not long ago? Ren Zaiasu asked knowingly. That was for the big shots in the stronghold, so stop acting dumb. If I didn't send the medicine in, do you think you would have taken over this clinic so easily? Wang Fugui complained. To tell you the truth, I was only planning to give it to Chen Haidong at the beginning. I don't understand how it made its way into Boss Luo's hands in the end. Here, Ren Zaiasu took out 2 small porcelain vials. Yesterday, he bought a small vial of black medicine to treat Yan Liayuan's fever. There were still 2 dosages left, so he separated them into different packaging a while ago. 12 yuan, and not a single yuan less. I'll be sending one of these vials into the stronghold. Wang Fugui stared. Don't you feel embarrassed about how much you're charging me? Take it or leave it. Ren Zaiasu prepared to put the black medicine back into his pocket. In the end, Wang Fugui did not hesitate. He decisively held Ren Zaiasu's arm and completed the transaction with cash. After that, Wang Fugui even thanked him. Gratitude received from Wang Fugui, +1. Ren Zaiasu felt that Wang Fugui was quite an interesting person. His 2 thank yous so far had earned Ren Zaiasu 2 gratitude tokens. However, Ren Zaiasu found it a little pitiful to give away the medicine just like that. Zaiasu, attend to the patients quickly. Ren Zaiasu placed the bamboo basket on the ground and asked, what injuries do the 2 of you have? I'll have you know you've come to the right place. That's great. The man said, we aren't injured, but my wife, who's 4 months pregnant, suddenly got some pain in her stomach this morning. I was afraid that something might have happened, so we came to see if you could treat her. Ren Zaiasu froze. Although he was a doctor, he had no idea how to treat something like this. In these current times, there was no such thing as andrology and gynecology. The mindset of the refugees in town was to go to the clinic whenever they felt ill. This put Ren Zaiasu in a difficult position. He had said those boastful words and was now faced with the expectations of the couple, so surely he could not disgrace himself, right? Ren Zaiasu tried hard to remember the lessons that Mr. Zhang had taught in school, and the books that he had read there to think of a way to deal with this problem he was facing. What would doctors commonly say to expectant mothers and their family members? Ren Zaiasu gave it some thought. Do you want to save the mother or the baby? The couple was confused. The man grew furious. You're a quack, right? My wife is only experiencing some stomach pain and you asking me whether I want to save the mother or the baby. The problem is, my wife is only 4 months pregnant. Where would I put the baby if I chose to save it? Ren Zaiasu thought it sounded quite logical. This time he said with a sigh, I'm really sorry to the 2 of you. I was in the wrong. To be honest, I don't know a thing about gynecology. If I continued fooling you, that would be unforgivable. The previous doctor also wouldn't know how to treat her since he really was a quack. It had to be said that Ren Zaiasu could easily kill someone without blinking his eyes if they deserved to die. But he couldn't do something against his conscience like lying to an expectant mother. The couple looked at each other as they did not expect Ren Zaiasu to say something like that. The man thought for a while. I feel that you're a little better than the previous doctor. The last time I got sick, he was so afraid that I wouldn't buy his medicine. However, my health did not improve even after taking his medicine. I had to pull through and recover by myself. The pregnant woman stood up and said with a smile, thank you, doctor. Gratitude received from Qin Jiajia, +1. Ren Zaiasu was taken aback. He did almost nothing this time, but he still gained a gratitude out of the blue. From now on, he would only treat illnesses that he could treat. If he couldn't, then so be it. In the end, none of the patients that came today suffered from any sort of wounds. Instead, all of them had aches and ailments that he did not know how to treat. To his surprise, when he told these patients that he honestly couldn't do anything for them, he still managed to raise the number of gratitude tokens to 10 at the end of the day, without even having to use any of the black medicine. Ren Zaiasu sat in the clinic in a state of confusion. What the fuck was going on? He didn't know everyone had accumulated grievances with the previous doctor, Yu Tong, over a long period of time. Through Ren Zaiasu's actions, those who had gone to seek treatment from him started publicizing him. I think ruthless Ren Zaiasu is a much better person than that previous bastard of a doctor, Yu Tong. If he doesn't know how to treat your illness, He will never try to make money off you by prescribing medicine on a whim. As night fell, Renzai felt that his life was starting to get better. At this moment, he was staring at the 10 gratitude tokens that he had accumulated inside the palace. He was thinking about how great it would be if he could unlock the weapon soon. Yan Liayuan was sleeping soundly next to him. All of a sudden, Renzai heard an unusual noise coming from behind the yard's wall. The person who made that sound seemed to be extremely cautious about something. However, someone like Renzai, who had often survived out in the wilderness, had to be alert to any sound or movement. He might die if he wasn't. He immediately blew out the kerosene lamp in the room and quietly made his way into the yard. Renzai hid at the bottom of the wall and carefully listened to the movements on the other side. He heard someone leap onto the wall from outside. That person grabbed the top of the wall with their hands and then pulled themselves up with both hands before finally leaping over the wall and into the yard. While still in midair, the man looked down at the ground and happened to spot Renzai, who was sizing him up with a curious look. The next second, he saw Renzai fall into a squat and draw his arms back. It was as though he was gathering up all of his strength before letting it burst. He threw a punch that could split a mountain apart, aiming it straight at the crotch of the uninvited guest. The uninvited guest tried to dodge the attack. He was quite skillful and could easily counter the danger by putting his knees together and using them to strike Renzai. But Renzai was much quicker than he expected. Wait, the uninvited guest lost his balance and fell to the ground in pain. He clutched his privates and chuffed in agony. A second later, another 2 figures jumped in. Wait, fuck. Another 2 people were left rolling on the ground. Renzai frowned. If he had to give an assessment of their skills, it was probably just average. But if he were blunt, these people would not even last 1 round against him. Someone knocked on the front door. A familiar voice said, "Open up." Renzai remembered this voice. It was the officer who had led the private army to search the entire town. Suddenly, he realized that these people were from the Stronghold's private army. However, Renzai could not understand why these people were so weak. In reality, they weren't weak. Although the Stronghold's private troops often neglected their training, normal people couldn't deal with them so easily. These private troops had heard from someone that Renzai was well known for being ruthless. But from their point of view, how strong could a refugee be? He wondered why the private army's troops would intrude on their property by climbing over the wall, while dressed in civilian clothing. It was quite obvious that they were trying to catch him off guard and had come back to check on the most suspicious person in the missing gun case. Right when he was about to tell his men to kick the door open, the clinic's door opened by itself. The soldiers standing outside the door were confused. They saw Renzai wrapped in a large banner that had the words "Magic Hands Restore Spring" from Luo Lan on it. The officer fell silent for a while, then laughed in spite of himself. What was this? Using the banner to protect himself. Renzai was on full alert as he scrutinized the officer's expression. He was mainly worried that the officer would get impulsive and take revenge even though he saw the banner that was wrapped around his body. However, the officer skirted around him and went straight in. "Search?" Renzai followed them and said, "Didn't you already search me?" The officer's expression darkened when he saw his soldiers still rolling around in the yard. "Bunch of good-for-nothings." He turned to Renzai. "My name is Wang Kanjiong. If you want to get Boss Luo to stand up for you, you can tell him my name." "How can I?" Renzai grinned sarcastically and said, "It's not like you've done anything wrong." Wang Kanjiong sized up Renzai. After several minutes of searching by his men, they came out and reported, "We couldn't find anything." Wang Kanjiong immediately led his soldiers out. Before he left, he turned around and smiled ambiguously at Renzai. "If only you were born in the Stronghold. That would have been great. You make a much better soldier than this bunch of wastes of space." "Wait a minute." Renzai was stunned. The factory manager was named Wang Danyang. Could it be that this Wang Kanjiong was related to him in some way? No wonder this man did not give up on investigating him. It was because he was trying to track down the murderer. At dawn, Renzai opened the clinic's door and saw Wang Fugui sweeping the grocery store with a broom. Right at this moment, a man sprinted over with a bleeding arm. When the man was still a distance away from the clinic, he shouted, "Doctor, please save me." The man was probably frightened because his arm was bleeding heavily. However, Renzai knew at a glance that this man's wound was nothing serious. In town, nothing serious meant not having to die. It had to be said that the refugees had quite a broad outlook on life. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. Quest, successfully treat 20 patients. Even though Renzai had completed the repeatable quest for the 3rd time by successfully treating 10 patients throughout the day, His gratitude tokens fell from 10 to 8. Many of the patients did not give him any gratitude even after they had been successfully treated. However, Renzai felt that his life was extraordinarily enriching. During the morning, he would attend to patients at the clinic. During the afternoon, he would take over his duties as the substitute teacher at school. At night, he would chat with Xiaoyu and Yan Liayuan out in the yard. Renzai asked his mind palace, "What are my current strength and dexterity?" The voice from the palace answered, "You have a strength of 5.5 and a dexterity of 4.1. Renzai did not say anything. It seemed that his attributes were relatively balanced for now, and it was unlikely that he would suddenly look like a beefcake. Yan Liayuan suddenly asked, "Bro, why didn't you treat all the patients? Every one of them represents money to be made." Renzai glanced at him. "I don't know how to treat them." The previous doctor didn't know how to treat them either, yet he still treated everyone who came to the clinic. Yan Liayuan thought about it and questioned him again. "We can't learn from him," Renzai explained. "Take a look at his current plight. Did anyone offer to help him when he was in trouble? As people, we need to have inviolable principles. But if something happens to us, others may not help either," Yan Liayuan muttered with his head lowered. "Liayuan, remember this," Renzai said seriously. "Don't let the sorrows of our era become your sorrow as well." Yan Liayuan fell deep into thought while Xiaoyu looked at the two brothers with glistening eyes. She suddenly felt that as long as Renzai was with Yan Liayuan, he would never take a wrong path in his life. The band was back. Renzai was a little puzzled by this. It would have taken them at least 2 months to go back and forth from Stronghold 112, and here, calculating the time, it was probably only a week since the band left. So, they couldn't have reached Stronghold 112 at all. In fact, they wouldn't even have reached the foot of the Jing Mountains. In theory, there shouldn't be any danger along the way other than the wolves. But the appearance of the wolves here in town was staggered with the band's timing. If the band had actually encountered the wolf pack, they probably wouldn't have made it back alive. After all, the wolves were no longer afraid of gunshots. When he remembered the wolves, Renzai got a little worried. The cap-wearing girl with perfect firearms proficiency was also walking behind the off-road vehicle with holes all over her clothes. But when Renzai examined her, he realized that although she looked pathetic just like everyone else in the band, her steps were still light and steady. From this observation alone, the cap-wearing girl was much stronger than the accompanying private troops. Of course, this was also what Renzai had expected. After all, how could someone with perfect firearms proficiency be outshone by those private troops? They saw that the band was divided into 2 groups. One group went to process the clearance for entry into the stronghold while another headed straight for Wang Fugui's grocery store. "Bro, why are they looking for old Wang?" Yan Liayuan asked. They could be looking to settle the score with him. He was the one who recommended the guide, after all. That hunter who went as their guide didn't come back with them, so who knows whether he was the one who led them into trouble and made them have to come back earlier in such a pathetic state. Renzai had been a little worried about Wang Fugui. However, when he saw him looking so calm, he thought that maybe there wasn't a need to worry for him. The people in the off-road vehicle got out as well. Luo Xinyu was dressed in white casual wear. Or rather, it had been white at first. She stared at Wang Fugui and questioned, "What kind of guide did you recommend to us?" Wang Fugui asked, "What's the matter?" He was truly a little curious. Since that person was supposedly an experienced hunter, it was unlikely that he would make any rookie mistakes. So why were these people so angry? "You dare to ask what's the matter?" Luo Xinyu said coldly. "Before we could even get near the Jing Mountains, he had taken us in the wrong direction. We couldn't figure out our exact location even after trying for 3 days. A lot of people knew that it was possible to drive to the Jing Mountains because there was a gravel road in the canyon where there likely had been a riverbed. So, where is he now?" Old Wang asked startled. "He died before he could find the way," a private soldier said coldly. "As a hunter from around here, he didn't even know that there was danger in the waters. When he went to wash up at the riverbank in the morning, his face got bitten to a bloody pulp by something." Wang Fugui leaned against the doorframe of the grocery store and said, "Oh, so that's what happened, eh? But I probably won't have time to find you a new guide. I have to get something done for Boss Luo Lan." In reality, Boss Luo hadn't arranged any tasks for him. He was just trying to let them know that he was in the care of Boss Luo. The private troops started frowning, and even Luo Xinyu was shocked to hear that. They didn't expect the man they wanted to teach a lesson to be backed by Luo Lan. Relaxed, Wang Fugui said, "I told you a long time ago that if you're looking to get there, you have to find Renzai, that guy who's sick in the head." A private soldier frowned deeply. That kid who fantasized about being a doctor. Wang Fugui suddenly felt a little awkward. He pointed at the window of the clinic across the way. Perhaps none of you expected it, but he has really become a doctor. Liu Xinyu and the private troops were surprised. Everyone looked in the direction Wang Fugui was pointing. The next morning, Ren Zaiasu opened the clinic on time and got ready for business. But as soon as he opened the door, he saw Wang Fugui standing outside with a smile on his face. Ren Zaiasu snapped, "What's the matter? You see, I recommended you to them back then with good intentions." Wang Fugui said, "It's a chance for you to get into the stronghold. I'll draw a map for you to lead them there. If you manage to bring them there, you'll gain entry to the stronghold." "I can't go." Wang Fugui flinched. "I'm not as skilled as you. Besides, what will my son do if I end up getting into the stronghold? You may have a son, but I also have Liaoyuan and big sister Zioyu. What will happen to them if I get into the stronghold? If you recommend me to them again, I'll make Liaoyuan and big sister Zioyu go to your place and leech off of you. I'm only doing this for your good." Wang Fugui was exasperated and said, "If I were 20 years younger, I would have gone." Gratitude received from Wang Fugui, +1. Ren Zaiasu was confused. He raged at the palace in his mind. How can this also be fucking considered as a gratitude? You're even assessing it to be sincere. You must be fucking doing this on purpose. Ren Zaiasu could never have expected to gain his 9th gratitude token in this fashion. At this moment, a man came up to Ren Zaiasu from the road and said, "Doctor, I want a consultation." "Enough talking, I've got a patient to attend to." Ren Zaiasu turned around and went back into the clinic. Ren Zaiasu sat behind the table and said to the man, "Where's your injury? Let me have a look." "I'm not injured, my balls ache," the man said. After he said that, the nurse, Zioyu, who was standing nearby, blushed in embarrassment. Ren Zaiasu felt a little awkward as well, so he tried to be professional and asked, "Do you experience the pain after intercourse?" The man was taken aback. "It hurts all the same whether I finish doing it or not." Ren Zaiasu was at a loss. What the hell is going on with the newest patients who come for a consultation? Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.